I call this June 9th Planning Commission meeting to order. We have 4 items on the agenda tonight, and before we consider them, we want to consider the minutes from last week's meeting, June 2nd. What's the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of June 2nd, 2022.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. And motion carries. The items considered here tonight will be, if they are forwarded to council, will be considered on June the 27th. So come back to City Council. City Council makes the final decision. We are a recommending body. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our former mayor, Bill Howe, is in the room tonight. Thank you for your service, sir. Nice to see you. The first item on the agenda is PH-22-04/Z-22-04, the Bridges Alpharetta, Webb Bridge Road. I assume Michael is presenting.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. This evening, the first item before you, the applicant is Madewell Homes. They're requesting a change to previous conditions of zoning and a rezoning to allow for the construction of a 6-lot, single-family detached gated subdivision, and that's on 7.83 acres. A rezoning is requested for a portion of this property from CUP to R. The remainder of the property has already been rezoned to R, minimum 1-acre lots, back in 2019, associated with the Walker 4360 Webbridge Road file. Have the location map on the overhead. Subject property is located at 0 and 4430 Webbridge Road. It's about southeast of the Webbridge Road and Shirley Bridge Road intersection. This is a street view of the property. This is the existing curb cut off of Webbridge Road. The applicant would utilize that existing curb cut for the development. This is a view of the property along Webbridge Road, just a little bit further south of that entrance. And then this is the new CUP property that they're requesting. There is an existing home on that property. And this is the property that they're requesting to rezone to R. So, most of the property is undeveloped with the exception of the CUP property that has a home on it. There is a small area of the property that's impacted by stream buffers. The lot that is proposed here does not encroach on these stream buffers. The initial application that came into the city did request some variances, including to allow some encroachment on the stream buffer. Those variances have been removed, so there are no variances with this application. With respect to the surrounding development, let me just put that aerial map back up. The Broadland subdivision is located to the north and east of the property. There's unplatted residential lots in Park Glen subdivision located to the south. Webbridge Middle School is across Webbridge to the west, and the Walker property is located to the north. Comprehensive land use plan designation of this property is low density residential. As I mentioned earlier, most of this property was already rezoned to R, minimum 1-acre lots. That was May 28, 2019. The applicant has, of course, acquired that property in addition to a new property with the CUP zoning, and is coming back to change previous conditions of zoning in order to allow for a new site layout of the site. The applicant is requesting, did request that all the previous conditions of zoning be deleted. This is the applicant site plan. As I mentioned, this is 6 lots. The average lot size is 1.01 acres. access to the property is from Webbridge Road, just south of Shirley Bridge. All lots are oriented interior to the site, so nothing is fronting on Webbridge Road. And the lots are fed by new private driveway, ending in a cul-de-sac. 5-foot sidewalks are depicted on one side of the street. There are also tree saves indicated on the site plan. Those are indicated in the red. However, I did receive an email from the applicant late this afternoon removing 4 tree saves, trees that staff believe to be tree saves at the front entrance to the development. And then the stormwater management facility, they are showing a stormwater management facility up here on its own lot. This applicant has named this development The Bridges, and they do have and I'll let the applicant go into more details, but through here, there's a swale area with rock material, and then the driveways would go over this swale area with bridges, providing access to each of the homes. So each of these homes has a bridge over this water feature that would feed into the detention pond. The applicant also provided a photographic example of the type of home that they would like to build within this development. They're showing 2 stories in this particular photograph, and it is showing with an all brick exterior. Of course, we looked at the established review criteria for rezoning when we're assessing the applicant's request. We do believe that the rezoning is consistent with the future land use. We don't support the full deletion of all the previous conditions of zoning, and I'll identify some of those when we go through the conditions. But we believe that the rezoning is consistent with the existing use of adjacent and nearby properties. Of course, the R zoning designation and the density of 0.77 dwelling units per acre would have the least impact to the surrounding properties. The low-density residential future land use designation would allow for an R12 or R15 zoning, actually, and so they're only asking for R, which is the minimum 1-acre lots. If approved, we are recommending some conditions addressing the aesthetics of the stormwater management pond, some tree preservation conditions, and then some of the previous conditions of zoning that the previous owner of this property agreed to as it relates to their discussions with the neighboring property owners. We believe that some of those zoning conditions should remain. Specifically, a previous zoning condition related to a 25-foot undisturbed buffer adjacent to the Broadlands subdivision. The applicant did provide their citizen participation plan. They indicated that they had met with several residents in the adjacent Broadlands subdivision towards the end of May. The applicant did agree to some conditions as it relates to the stormwater pond. They agreed to have no walls in the pond, so only earthen berm, that they would provide evergreen plantings to screen the stormwater facility outside the 10-foot access easement. And they also agreed to slow the flow of runoff from the pond onto the neighboring properties. They didn't indicate by how much they would slow that flow, but they indicated in that report that they agreed to that. The applicant also agreed to remove a hazardous tree that was leaning towards an adjacent property. The city also received some correspondence from the adjacent property owners in the Broadlands with similar concerns. There was a letter that was emailed to all the Planning Commission that we received this morning from some of the residents in the Broadlands community. Some of the concerns noted in that letter, most of the concerns dealt with the stormwater management facility. They're asking for aesthetically pleasing, which is contained in a condition related to that facility, that be further defined. They did ask for dragonfly attracting plants. So dragonflies are apparently like mosquitoes, and so they're asking that dragonfly attracting plants be utilized around the pond to maintain mosquito control. And then with respect to the aesthetically pleasing condition of the stormwater facility, they're asking for water-loving vegetation planted in and around the pool, pond. That the pond design be attractive when empty, so no muddy areas that would promote mosquitoes or unpleasant smells. They're also asking for a natural or organic shape to the pond. The adjacent neighbors also asked, as it relates to the commitment by the developer to slow the rate of stormwater flow onto the adjacent property, they asked for clarification on that condition, that be by 10%. They also asked for a condition related to fencing around the stormwater facility. So the city's code does not require any fencing. We do require screening around a detention facility, but we do not require fencing. The applicant apparently has indicated to the neighbors that they do plan to put some fencing around that. It's been indicated in the letter that that was going to be chain link fencing, and the neighbors are asking that that be 5-board horse fencing, which is the fencing that is currently utilized on the frontage of this property along Wetbridge Road, and was in that previous conditions from the 2019 rezoning, so that it matches that. And then they just asked for some clarification on that leaning hazardous tree, that be specified that it's the hazardous tree leaning towards 121 Westchester Way. This item was also shown to the public at the May 11th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were concerns over stormwater runoff, what that stormwater management facility would look like, buffers and fencing, tree removal, and impacts to the nearby stream. With that, just finding all my conditions here. Staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request to several conditions. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition that ties it to the Travis Pruitt and Associates site plan revised date 5/9/2022. Condition 2, subdivision shall be gated subject to final approval by staff. 3, homes visible from Wetbridge Road shall be primarily brick or stone as approved by staff. Home elevation shall be substantially similar to the submitted photograph labeled Exhibit A with final approval by staff. Homes shall have 3-sided architecture and materials, except those rear elevations visible from Wetbridge Road shall have similar architectural details and materials as the front facade. Condition 4, minimum 20-foot decorative landscape strip shall be provided along Wetbridge Road, consisting of trees, shrubs, and ground cover as approved by staff. Existing tree groupings and trees of quality shall be saved in the landscape strip as approved by staff. 5, minimum 10-foot landscape strip shall be provided along new private street, consisting of trees, shrubs, and ground cover as approved by staff. Condition 6, project entrance shall include decorative ornamental plantings as approved by staff. 7, common area on the south side of the private street shall be planted with a mix of deciduous and evergreen landscape material and shall meet the minimum planting requirements of the 10-foot landscape strip, 6-foot planter, and 5-foot perimeter landscape strip as approved by staff. 8, per the original conditions, so that relates back to the 2019 file, minimum 25-foot undisturbed buffer replanted where sparse with evergreen trees and shrubs shall be provided along the common property line with the adjacent Broadland subdivision. Condition 9, stormwater management facility shall be an amenity, aesthetically pleasing, no walls, earthen bank, and screened with evergreens as approved by staff. 10, as agreed to by the developer, the rate of stormwater runoff shall be slowed from the pond to the neighboring properties. 11, developer shall dedicate necessary right-of-way to accommodate the city's Woodbridge Road improvements. 12, developer shall improve the new private street with a minimum 5-foot sidewalk on one side of the street, minimum 6-foot planter planted with street trees and decorative pedestrian lighting as approved by staff. Streetscape modification shall be permitted for the purpose of tree preservation or utility conflicts with a final approval by staff. 13, fencing visible from Woodbridge Road shall be a continuation of the existing 5-board horse fence. Unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from Woodbridge Road. 14, home footprint shall be laid out to minimize impacts to existing tree canopy as approved by staff. 15, specimen tree shall be preserved as depicted on the site plan prepared by Travis Pruitt, revised 5/9/22. 16, developer shall identify and save additional tree groupings and/or trees of quality outside required stream buffers as approved by staff. 17, drainage easement rock swale material shall require final approval by staff. Drainage swale shall be maintained by the HOA. 18, developer shall make reasonable efforts to obtain easements to tie stormwater pond outfall through a pipe directly into a downstream structure rather than releasing at grade, as approved by staff. If tie-in is not possible, measures shall be used to prevent concentrated flow at the property line, as approved by staff. 19, utility structures, head walls, etc. shall be finished with decorative stone if visible from the Broadlands subdivision, as approved by staff. And 20, no more than 10% of the residential units or one dwelling unit shall be permitted to be rented as recorded in the HOA's declarations and covenants. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. One, how many of these conditions were in the 2019 application? You noted number 8. Do you have the conditions that were included in the 2019 application?
I do have them in my file here. I'm going to see if I can quickly locate them for you. Thought I had them queued up here. Just bear with me for a second. Oh, here we go. No.
If you don't have them, you can bring them up
I've
later.
got them. I've got them here. I'm sorry about that, Chairman. So this is the beginning of the conditions here in red.
Is that all?
So the first condition is the site plan specific condition. There was the second condition dealt with the home, exterior home material being brick and stone. The next condition addressed the 5-board horse fence along Woodbridge Road. The next condition deals with unfinished wood decks and fences, the typical condition that we put in addressing those. The next condition addresses the private road that was proposed with that particular plan. The condition 6 dealt with a stream determination that was referring to that stream further to the south. Condition 7 dealt with wetland or rain garden. There was a rain garden that was proposed on that plan, so it was specific to that particular rain garden. It was proposed kind of in that same location as they're proposing their stormwater pond. Condition 8 is a condition related to home sites and new road being laid out to minimize impacts to existing trees. Condition 9 is the 25-foot undisturbed buffer adjacent to the Broadlands community. 10 was the additional right-of-way along Webbridge Road, providing the additional right-of-way needed for the Webbridge Road project. Condition 11, minimum 10-foot access easement provided from the private road to the rain garden so that they could maintain that stormwater facility. 12, address the runoff reduction. And 13 required that the stormwater management facility be amenity and aesthetically pleasing and screened.
Thank you. I wanted you to bring them up because I saw them raised in the letter we received earlier today from the community, and they are not substantially different than what we are looking at. Just for the board's, just to refresh you on what we approved in 2019. The next question is regarding the stormwater management facility. Do you have pictures of one that you have approved, that you worked with an applicant to approve as aesthetically pleasing?
I don't know that I have any available. However, I would say that in that letter from that we received from the neighbors, they took the time to present some really nice examples of aesthetically pleasing stormwater ponds as opposed to some that aren't so aesthetic.
Okay, and we don't need to see those unless any one of you want to see them. The reason I'm asking these questions regarding the approval process, what do you usually do with the applicants or developers when you're approving a detention facility or stormwater management facility? What type of interaction do they submit? Their plans?
Yes, it's part of the land disturbance permit review process. If there are conditions, so if it's a property that has gone through a public hearing and there are conditions, and of course if there are any conditions that say aesthetically pleasing or natural look to it, typically we're looking for things like similar to what the residents have requested. So a natural shape, water-loving plants in and around the pond.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, I've got a couple questions for Michael. So Michael, on the trees, and this relates to a change in the letter that came late today. If I'm understanding you right, we're going from 11 tree saves down to 7. Is that what the applicant is requesting?
To be honest with you, Commissioner, I didn't count the numbers right offhand. I can do that really quickly, but I know it was a reduction. They were removing 4 trees. Let's see real quick.
That's fine. If it's 10 or 11, it's more than 7,
Yeah.
obviously.
So some of the trees that they do show on their original site plan, those are off-site trees. And the reason why those are shown is they're within 30 feet of the property line, and there's potential for their critical root zones to be impacted by this property. So that's why they're shown. So they're not, it's not a total of 11 that are being saved on site. There's some that are off-site that will be saved and not impacted.
So at this time, the condition 15 still, I guess, stands, right? It's the city staff is not and the city arborist is not in agreement with removing these 4 trees.
The new revised site plan removing those 4 trees were sent after 5 o'clock this evening, and so the city arborist hasn't even had a chance to look at it. So
we don't know?
We don't know.
Okay, the other question I had is around condition 3. And the word primarily. You know, primarily for me could mean 51%. For William, it could mean 75%, and that would be perfectly reasonable. In addition to that, a couple blocks east of this development, proposed development, a few years ago, I recall that specific quantified conditions for facade materials were put on them that were in percentages. So would you be open, when we get to a motion, potentially, to have us quantify that? And if we did quantify it, what does the city staff define as primarily?
Yeah, I would not have a problem with you quantifying that. It'd probably take a little bit of guesswork out of that once it comes back to staff during the review process. Primarily would be it would be 75%. So
in other words, William would be right.
You can use predominantly.
No, that's good. That's good. And then the last question, if you will, and this relates to the letter late today. some of the detention pond asks were presented by the homeowners in the Broadlands prior to today. They provided input to that. But in the detailed letter today, they mentioned some requirements that are not captured, and some asks that were not captured in condition 9. I'm just trying to figure out, do we need to, if we get to a motion, do we need to worry about that now and condition things like plants that attract dragonflies, or do we let that be handled by the DRB, or how do we handle that?
If you would like to address some of the concerns that were noted in the residents' letter, I just, in case it came up, I did go ahead and draft a change to condition number 9. I have that I can show to you. I also draft a change to condition number 10 regarding the rate of flow, should you want to make a change to clarify that there. And then I also drafted 2 new conditions related to the fencing, as well as the hazardous tree that's leaning on the neighbors. And again, this is just in anticipation. If you wanted to add these items, it's nothing that's necessarily being promoted by staff, but I just wanted to prepare that just in case. So here's condition number 9. And so what I've done is I've added the information that's added is in red and underlined. And I'm happy to hand this off to anyone that might be making the motion on this.
Do you have copies or you just have one?
I honestly did forget to bring copies, but I can hand it off after you're done questioning me.
We may want to just refer to that when we have our discussion and motion. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Sure.
Actually, I have another question for Michael, Chairman. So in the previous conditions, I did go back and do that homework and looked, just as you did, show us. We had talked about a road access to the stormwater basin for maintenance, and I'm a little concerned with the way these lots are set up. If something were to go wrong, how are we going to access that? And I know that they're not always at the front of the property and easy, so how is that going to be addressed, or do we need to worry about that?
So the applicant shows the access coming between lots, I believe that's 3 and 4. So here, and then up to the pond at this location.
Okay.
This is a drainage easement and access easement, I believe
Okay.
is the way that it's labeled, yes.
Okay.
So that's how they would maintain, they would get access to the pond. And then there's another 10-foot access easement that's required around the facility.
And then the other question I have is, because this had gone through some design work prior, had there been a hydrology study done on this property, or are we still going to wait after and then address those concerns as they're done after that study?
If there have, it's not been anything that's been submitted to the city. So after the 2019 rezoning of the main bulk of this property, it's my understanding that nothing was ever submitted with regard to land disturbance permit for that plan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. With regard to the Webb Ridge Road corridor project, are there any concerns with the design for that corridor project such that the amount of right-of-way that's going to need to be taken and the impact from a traffic perspective? I don't think I've seen final designs that confirm whether there will be a median at that point that would make left turns out of this property impossible.
So I did reach out, we reached out to the Public Works Department. The applicant is showing the potential right-of-way impact to their property in this dashed area here from that project. Don't have final design, so I don't know if there's going to be any median conflicts here. But it's my understanding that, well, the previous conditions required that property owner provide the right-of-way necessary for this, and we are also recommending a similar condition.
Okay, and follow-up question. Have there been any traffic studies done because of the proximity of this curb cut to the stoplighted intersection? Namely, I'm thinking in terms of left turns out of the property onto Webb Ridge Road, that close to so much turning traffic.
Yeah, so our traffic engineer did review this. It didn't warrant a traffic study, and he didn't see anything that concerned him with respect to that. I suspect that's possibly due to utilizing, there's an existing curb cut there today, but there was no requirement for the applicant to study that due to any concerns from staff.
Thank you, Michael.
Any other questions?
I have one quick, just like, if he's saying that, if the applicant is only saying that he's going to save, I don't know, like 7 or 8 trees, then wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that the tree leaning over to the resident who's, trying to think what address it is, I mean, it's fair to say that that tree's not going to be there, is it not?
I don't believe that that's one of the trees that's identified to be saved.
No, but right, so it's not going to be there, is what I'm saying. So why do we have to condition it?
Well, it's an agreement that the developer has made with that property owner. So I believe it was 121 Westchester.
Right.
And so the developer has made an agreement that he will remove that tree for that resident.
Okay.
And so to capture that agreement,
You're gonna put it in
we
this-
memorialized it in the conditions.
Okay. And then we're going to listen to the applicant, or not the applicant, but the resident on 510 Cambridge Court, because there's also another possible tree issue.
Yeah, there's another neighbor, I believe, on the north side, and I believe she's in this particular lot, but she has, I believe it's a 70-inch water oak tree that is on her property. It is not shown with its critical root zone on this particular plan. The applicant was under the impression that they would only need to show the specimen trees, and not even, and they weren't under the understanding that they needed to show only the trees that they're going to save. But it's not shown with its critical root zone on here. She does have some concern about the potential impacts on that tree since it's so large. 70-inch water oak will have a quite large critical root zone associated with it. And she was concerned with the impact from digging this stormwater facility out on that particular tree. Now, the applicant's arborist is indicating that because of a lightning strike on that tree, that it's not in good condition. I believe that that property owner has requested her own arborist assessment of that tree in her backyard. I think it's just a concern of didn't want to get stuck with a tree that's just going to be further impacted and die, and then she's going to be responsible to have to remove it. But I believe that that particular property owner is here and will speak in reference to
Okay,
that.
perfect.
A follow-up question for you, Michael, regarding the reduction in tree saves. So if the city arborist has not reviewed that request, we really don't know at this point what staff position will be on that, correct?
We wouldn't know what the staff position would be on changing that condition, and I believe that the applicant's going to ask for that change.
Okay, and so at this point, about how long would you estimate it would take for the arborist to review the change request?
I think it can be done fairly quickly, but, without that knowledge this evening, it would be my recommendation to leave that condition as is for now.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi there, yes, Torrey Young, 2109 Commerce Street is my home residence. And first of all, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know it's a sacrifice out of your days, so thank you for that. We first learned of this property. I actually lived in Shirley Estates, and I would look out my back door at the Walkers' beautiful, huge oak trees and the Red Barn and all the land there. And I struck up a friendship with the Walkers, and as we began to talk through different things, they had shared with me, just a little bit of history on the land, and I got more interested in it and decided that it would be a great place to provide folks with some larger 1-acre lots. It's kind of a unicorn in the area, especially that side of 400. And so that's kind of the purpose or what we set out to do. And, you know, my mindset was, let's try to keep it as simple. Sometimes you have to just maneuver and do lots of things in order for something to work. And I felt like this was a little more straightforward. We want 1 acre lots. We're going to do a very nice community, gated, and keep it pretty straightforward. The original plan, when the land engineers got involved, they had it as a clear-cut community where they would just go in, clear everything out, and then we would start from there. And we see a lot of that here in Alpharetta. I wanted to try and stay away from that, and so I went back to them and I said, hey, what I want to see happen is obviously we've got to have a road in. So trees are going to be impacted there. We've got to have driveways. Trees are going to be impacted there. We've got to have houses, and most people would probably want their own personal amenity. So we've designed the homes for the most part to envelop with a pool and the house, all kind of confined to one general location. And that was the mindset behind it. You know, one of the trees that had come up in conversation was actually because of what the future plans are for the Webb Ridge road widening and all of that. So that tree is going to be impacted regardless of whether we move forward on the project or not. But there were a few others that obviously were impacted just because of logistics and having a way in and all of that. So the spirit behind it has been to try to not ruffle too many feathers and, you know, and then bring something very nice to the community.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I assume you've read all the conditions that staff is recommending for approval. Do you have any objections to any of them, modifications? I don't see any markups.
Yeah, so I believe that we are comfortable with everything as far as I understand it to this point. The biggest sticking point would obviously be the question about the trees that would be affected. But once again, the first one is out by the road, where that would be the new cut would be taken out by the Webb Ridge new road project. And then we have one that's definitely impacted down the private drive that we'd be creating. Off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure where the other two are, but nonetheless, that's my biggest sticking point. Obviously, we got to get roads and driveways and houses in. Aside from that, we're going to work hard to, save different pockets of trees. That was kind of my goal. It's beautiful back there as you walk around, and I wanted to try and keep as much of that spirit alive in there, and make it feel almost like that home's been there for 20 years, and the trees have grown up around it, and trying to be strategic with that.
It's a beautiful piece of property.
It is.
Have you done a hydrology study yet?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not yet. That would be next step for us.
Understood. And you have no objections to working with staff to make it aesthetically pleasing and attractive?
Ask that again, I'm sorry.
You have no objection to the condition requiring that you work with staff for their approval to make it aesthetically pleasing and attractive? I mean, the stormwater management facility, it's a nice name for a pond.
No problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the, we did meet out with some of the neighbors. Felt like we had, pretty productive time together. And so I was apprehensive of wanting to commit to certain things that I don't know. For instance, it was mentioned we don't want a fence around the detention pond. We want it to look natural, or we want a horse fence to go around that. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, what if insurance makes me put a chain link fence up to take care of the HOA? I don't want to say something that I have to walk back, and now I've lost trust with folks. Conversely, one of the neighbors has the tree that's leaning. I could definitively tell them, yes, we will take care of that. I'll remove the tree. So, there were probably parts of the conversation that they walked away from, concerned that You know, I try and skate around situations and then ultimately do what benefited me or our community, and not really think of them. But ultimately, the spirit of it is, these are nice homes. They live in nice homes. Everything around there needs to be, you know, done properly and to a proper level, and that'll be the spirit behind it. So that's a long answer to yes, we will work with staff.
Understood. And two more questions regarding stormwater management. One is the rock swale meant for infiltration of stormwater? Is it a control system for stormwater runoff, or is it decorative?
I would say I don't know precisely on that. My land engineer is not able to be here tonight.
Okay.
I do know that it's designed to be a retention system. A lot of it is designed to infiltrate into the ground. I know that there is going to be some occasional runoff, but the idea, and if you ever were back there, and I invite you to come back any time to see it, but currently the way that the land lays back through there's a crease, a natural crease in the land. So naturally water, when it rains, it's going to get to that crease, that low point, and then it's just going to meander. And so by just the sheer fact that we're doing the community, it's going to give it a congregation area versus what it currently is. So, we felt very confident that, at the end of the day, after the disruption of construction and all that it's going to meet a lot of people's concerns in a better way than it's currently existing.
The last question is actually regarding condition 10, which states that developer has agreed to slow down the rate of flow. Do you know what method the engineer is going to use or you propose to use?
Well, it's a pretty big detention area, and right now, if you look at it, you have a high side and then you have a dramatic low side. So naturally, the water's just going to flow to the low side. But what we're designing and building is almost like I'll call it a bathtub, right? It's raised on all sides to where it will contain that water flow, and it'll get to this, to that point, and then primarily soak into the ground. Whereas, as it currently sits, imagine this is the higher side and this is the lower side, and the water's just flowing where it's going to go. So that's the design idea conceptually, and John Lyons from Travis Pruitt feels confident that that's going to, be very, very beneficial.
I was actually getting into when the water leaves the pond, because some of it is going to be released. Are you going to use what is called a step pool?
I don't know that.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
You can ask your engineer.
I will.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Got a couple here. I just wanted to get into a little bit of detail on the aesthetically pleasing along the lines of what the chairman asked. And I just want to get real specific, because I know with the people in the Broadlands, they provided input prior to today. They submitted the letter, they've attended the meeting, and even though we're the recommending body, we like to recommend to the council based on what's known and agreed to today between the applicant, the homeowners, and the city staff. So if we were to move to approve this and the aesthetically pleasing condition was updated to have some details, like all the way down to the dragonfly attracting plants, you're okay with that?
My first question when I read that was, will that grow in Georgia? If it does, absolutely.
Right.
We'll dragonfly away.
Okay. And if it includes the wooden fence and not the chain link fence, you're okay with that?
Once again,
okay.
If insurance doesn't dictate otherwise, then I'm happy to do that. I just don't want to paint myself in a corner and then insurance tell me you're not in compliance and whatever that means. But absolutely, I don't have a problem with that. Furthermore, if they said they didn't want a fence and insurance didn't have a problem with that, then we would consider that as well if that was a more appetizing approach to them. I just didn't want to make definitive remarks on things I just didn't know at the time. They were great questions. I just didn't know answers to them.
I got you. The other thing I just wanted to confirm, because I thought I read some public input that there were issues with this coming into the day around 10 tell me, so you're okay with the 25-foot undisturbed buffer on the north and east end of the property, the area that, pardon me?
The broad, what backs up to the Broadlands?
Backs up to the Broadlands, but then also east, it's both north and east, so it's north kind of above the stormwater location, and it's east of that. And I want to make sure it's important to us to know what you're in agreement with and what you're not in agreement with.
Clarification that I received, and I could have been misunderstanding this, but was the corridor along the Broadlands property was the 25-foot buffer. And so if that's the case, then yes, we will adhere to that. We will not disturb that. And then if there's areas where we need to put in green shrubs or whatever, the things are that they're asking for in the conditions originally.
Cool.
Fine with that.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mr. Young.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here tonight. The homes are beautiful. I love the depiction of the picture you sent. And so, quick question. Somebody in the letter said something about the shape of the pond. Now, is that an issue with you in changing the shape, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And I did review all this with John before I came here tonight. And he
So you were copied on this as well? Okay, good.
It was forwarded to me.
Okay.
And he didn't see anything, real issue with that. No alarms went off in his head around that. So we can work towards trying to shape that properly.
So you're willing to work with staff on changing the shape of the pond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, Mr. Young, quick comment, it might be helpful.
Yeah.
There is a precedent in this area for the horse fence around a detention pond. If you need an example, look at Foxhaven off of Fox Road.
Okay.
Their detention pond is fairly deep, and then they only use a horse fence around that seems to have passed muster.
Perfect. That's good. Thank you.
I had a question on, a question on number 3, where it says the homes visible from Webbridge Road shall primarily be brick or stone. What was your intent? For 100% brick, 100% stone, or a mix?
Honestly, for me, I don't know that necessarily falls in line with everything that I would want to do. So I'll give you an example. Hardcoat stucco is becoming popular again. So, I would like to be able to introduce that material as well. Not looking to do synthetic stucco, any shortcutted type of approach, but there are definite, we're actually building one, excuse me, a home right down the road where there is a lot of stone and stucco.
All right, I think you need some water.
Just real quick, Chairman, just real quick. And it relates to that last answer, and Michael, you might need to chime in here. But if this were to be approved and condition 3 is in place, primarily brick or stone, the applicant will be held to primarily brick and stone and couldn't build a 4-sided stucco home, correct? I just want to be real clear.
Yeah, as written, it wouldn't allow a primarily exterior stucco home. Yes.
So the question is, are you okay with that condition? Because that's the condition we have in there now.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, good.
If there are no further questions, I'll open the meeting for public comments. You have time for rebuttal after the public meeting is closed. Anyone in favor of this application, you can sit down now.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have Amber Brannon from 510 Cambridge Court up first.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for being here and allowing me to speak tonight. Michael pretty much summed up our letter that we submitted to all of you. It's just mainly the appearance. I live, am I able to use this?
Did she state her name?
She has it.
I just would like to show you, oh, you have it there. Okay. My property is this one right here. This is 510 Cambridge Court, and I have the majority of the trees in my yard. I also brought some pictures of the view to kind of elaborate on the appearance. Like from my backyard, I really do look, I'll be looking directly into the detention pond or stormwater, what do we call it, stormwater facility. This is right, is that upside down? This is right from the back of my fence. So as of now, there's not a whole lot of, I mean, this was kind of just to reiterate the 25-foot buffer that we're requesting, just to kind of not have to see a really big retention pond back there. From the estimates that we were given by John, I know that everything is still moving and working, but it's supposed to be around 30 feet wide and 80 feet long. And so that takes up the majority of my backyard. And there's the three of us here that face this issue of hoping that we can camouflage it as much as possible. Ms. Reynolds, you were asking about the tree. Michael referred to, it's tree number 9 on the arborist report. It's been taken off of here, but it's right next, it's located right next to this tree right here. And the critical root zone stretches out approximately, I believe, 91 feet behind my property, and it is going to be affected by the retention pond. I currently have had an arborist come. I'm still waiting on a report from him, just kind of to understand for myself the condition of the tree. And as Michael stated, I'm very concerned, my family and I are very concerned with the outcome. I know there are a lot of protections in place for boundary trees. I'm still learning about them, so I just wanted to kind of go on record. This is a continuing, I guess, an ongoing situation for us to figure out what we're looking for protection, if there's anything else that we need besides what's listed in the documents for taking care of boundary trees. And I also have a picture of both tree 8 and 9 that I would like to show that's in my backyard. There we go. I'm sorry, I don't know where it went. This is, oh, here it is. They're very large, and the white oak is here, and it splits here in the middle, and partially it goes over the property line, and it's approximately 70 inches in diameter, and this one is approximately 30. So right now, this one is the boundary tree, and this one is the specimen tree. So that's really all that I wanted to say. I just appreciate your time and your consideration of our conditions. And Mr. Young has been very easy to speak with and talk through things. But we also just want to make sure that our properties are protected from diminished values with having a detention pond in the backyard. I can't foresee anyone being like, yeah, I want to buy that house. So with all of these protections that we've requested, hopefully that eases that burden. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Last one I have is Sandra Bacharach, 121 Westchester Way.
Hi all, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time. It sounds like everyone got our letter and it's been addressed, so I do appreciate you all taking time to consider our requests. I live, can I get this? Or no? Okay, I live at this property right here, 121 Westchester Way. the one with the leaning tree that you had asked about, it's in the undisturbed buffer. I have no doubt that Mr. Young was going to take it down. Tori has been wonderful. There's no level of mistrust. I know he kind of, is under the impression that maybe we doubt, what he's saying. That is not the case at all. He has been very straightforward.
Can you get closer to the microphone?
Oh, sure. He's been very straightforward. I have no doubt he would take that tree down. It just seemed like an easy enough condition to include. My biggest concern being where my property is located is that I appreciate how you said a stormwater facility is a very nice word for a detention pond. It is a very large pond. It is, the preliminary estimates, 30 feet by 80 feet, could go as high as, he said it could be bigger, could be 40 by 100. It's large. So our biggest concern is that it be aesthetically pleasing. There are certain words used in the original conditions, for example, sparse, that it be an amenity, and that it be aesthetically pleasing. I feel like those are the three key ones. Sparse is fairly well defined in the Alpharetta code as to what sparse actually means, an opaque screen that we cannot see through. That seems very straightforward. Amenity also has a definition. What is not clearly defined is aesthetically pleasing. And that, to your point about practically or primarily, could mean many things to many different people. And I can tell you aesthetically pleasing, what that means to me and what it means to my husband, two different things. To what it means to me, what it means to Tori, two different things. So we would just like some clarification and language added that would protect us. I don't know if you all saw the pictures that were included in I don't know if those were color. I know it comes out better in color. It is possible to build a very attractive detention pond. It's very possible. There are beautiful examples online. You have to look for them. It is very easy to find unattractive detention ponds. You can Google for hours and find those. So what we're asking is that this is very large. We will be looking, Amber as well as me, Cliff to a little bit of a lesser extent, even though he's right there. We look down. My property actually sits higher, kind of how Tori said, it kind of goes down. My property sits higher, so I look down. So unless these trees that are going to be planted are 50 feet long, well, okay, that might be an exaggeration. Unless they're 25 or 30 feet tall, I'm looking down. So it has to be aesthetically pleasing. So I'm just asking that language be provided so that there is no gray area when this comes up. And the dragonfly thing, that was a bit, kind of made me smile. It came up at some point, what about mosquitoes? How are we going to deal with mosquitoes? And somebody said, dragonfly-loving plants. So we just included it. Whether it's dragonfly-loving plant or something else, the key is mosquitoes and that for me, it's that it be attractive, that it look nice. It is possible to make it look nice. These are $2.5 million homes. Tori, and this is kind of something that kind of made me think, okay, we need to have some protection. I made a comment to Tori about, these are nice homes. This needs to look nice. And he made a comment, not in a bad way, but I kind of took it home with me. My homes won't see it. The way he's building them, and he can correct me if I'm wrong about this, he said something about they're going to be sort of self-contained, the pool, they're not going to see it, but we are. And then he also said, we're going to put a berm and a fence around it and put some trees around it. That's not specific. Or that's kind of what led us to write a letter, please specify, because that's not good enough, in our view. And we just feel like Alpharetta deserves better, current homeowners deserve better. He gets to build and go. We'd just like some protections. So,
Thank you.
I think that's...
Anyone else? Thank you. Anyone else in the audience would like to speak? In favor or against? Please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is George Strain. I live at 251 Churchill Heights. That's the property kind of to the southeast of this, which is on the other side of the stream. I just had a question. In the prior rezoning that was done in 2019, Condition 6 had called for a stream determination on that stream. That's on that kind of that it's within the stream buffer. And that's not in the conditions that were listed for this rezoning request. And I didn't know if that was a concern, but I wanted to highlight that that was a difference, that it seems like that disappeared. And I didn't know if the stream determination had ever been done.
Okay.
That's all.
We'll get clarification from staff in a moment. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment session, and I'll ask the applicant, where is he? Do you have any rebuttal, anything else you'd like to add before I turn this over to the board?
Just one thing related to the large tree. We did do the calculations, and it's about 17.5% into the critical root zone. And my understanding is that 20% is kind of the threshold. So just as a point of reference for the one concern from the neighbors on the large water oak.
You heard the concerns of the two speakers that spoke here today, and of course, being a neighbor, you want to be a good neighbor. Is there anything you'd like to say to respond to the concerns about aesthetics?
Like I said before, we definitely want to make it look as good as possible. We'll work with them to figure that out. We don't have a problem in the world whether it's putting in the 5 post fence or a no fence if we can not have to do that from an insurance requirement. Like, I'm happy to collaborate and figure those things out. And I said that the houses, just to clarify, the houses are designed to be self-contained, but at the same rate, it is in the community. The detention pond is in the community. We're going to want it to look good. No one's going to want to look at ugly retention pond. And to the neighbor's credit, there's definitely plenty of examples of ugly ones, and there's some that can look nice, and we will work towards looking nice.
And plus, Mr. Young, your homes might not see it, but they're going to have to maintain it, right?
For sure.
So I appreciate you working with the community, and you're okay with the language and clarifying or trying to clarifying aesthetically pleasing a little bit more in a condition, right? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Just one other quick question while you're up there. Can you tell us, for the 4 trees that you no longer want to save that were mentioned in today's letter, can you tell us the basis for that? Are they diseased? Are they in the footprint of the building? What's the reasoning behind that?
So I don't have that paperwork with me. I left it back up there, but there is one right in this area as you come in. This is the main entrance. The new road, the Webb Ridge widening, is actually going to eat into it, and it will definitely be in the critical root zone. And you can see the circles right here, hopefully. But that's what that was referencing. And that's honestly, that's a city thing. Whether we wanted it or not, that's going to be impacted, because that's one of the conditions that they're asking us to adhere to.
And you're saying the root zone, you believe, would be impacted?
That's right.
Okay. And what about the other 3?
Same thing. Down here, as you come down the road, there was another one. And I honestly, I didn't pick up the last 2, and my paperwork's back at my seat. Can I grab that real quick?
Mr. Chairman, can we each get a copy of that? No, that's all right. It's okay. I'm good.
And just to be fair, I'm a little confused. The first one, that you think the root ball will be in the way of the widening, I get that. The second one that you just pointed to is along the driveway, so I'm a little confused as to what you were referring to.
Yeah, well, the first mark obviously is right here. The second one is right here. Originally, when John, and he explained this to me when he was depicting this. He was just showing the four primary trees in the root zones that were going to be impacted in some way that we would definitely lose. It wasn't saying that those are the only specimen trees and we're gonna take those out, which I think was maybe a misunderstanding at some point, but that was specifically highlighting the trees that we knew would have to be impacted as a result of the construction. And if you've been over there, there's so many trees. So for, to pinpoint 4 trees out of it, clearly it wasn't a thing of trying to put together the mass of trees that are there. It was calling out trees that would be impacted. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I will turn this over to the board for discussion and/or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one more question for Michael. Back to the retention pond stormwater management facility, as it's stated in number 9, the firewall is addressing the residents in the other neighborhoods, but the firewall is the staff. When it comes to the design, the look, and things like that, isn't that as approved? Rather than saying it can only be this deep or look like this or these trees, it'd be great to hear or see a picture of what might be written in, because it's hard to make a specific. But aren't you the firewall to look at that and say, okay, that isn't aesthetically pleasing, you can't do that?
I mean, that condition does say as approved by staff, so the final approval is subject to staff's approval. I think that it would be helpful if we had a little bit more specificity in that condition as to, and I think that the residents have given an example of what that could be, the plantings in and around, the water-loving plantings in and around the pond, the shape of the pond, things like that. It would be helpful to staff if we had a little bit more specifics.
And Michael, before you leave, could you answer the resident's question regarding the condition on the original condition number 9?
Yeah, so the reason why the stream determination condition wasn't carried over from the 2019 is because city staff has been out to the stream and made the stream determination. It is a perennial stream here on the south portion of the property. Stream is actually off-site. It's the buffers that impact this property. So those are 150-foot buffers either side of the stream.
A perennial stream means that there is water in somewhere in the bed throughout the year.
Correct.
Michael, regarding the detention pond and the screening, if you recall from the Foxhaven rezoning, we had to have some conditions that specified the height of some of the evergreen screening for one of the detention ponds because there were homes that sat above and would have a bird's eye view of the interior of the pond. I'm wondering if we would have the opportunity here to help by specifying a minimum planted height and density of evergreen screening, if that would in fact help.
It would help if you want to go beyond what code requires. So code would require around a stormwater facility a double row of evergreen, 80% evergreen, 20% deciduous, but it would require a double row of shrubs, minimum 4 foot tall at planting. So if you wanted to go beyond that or have more evergreens than just 80%, that would need to be specified in a condition.
Yeah, I recall in that particular case, we actually managed to come to agreement at something like 12 feet of something that was, forget what the species was, but it was going to be a fairly fast growing so that it would provide some visual break from a second story window.
Yeah. I think typically it's the arborvitae, I believe, that is the fastest growing evergreen tree.
Also, second question, the specimen tree at the entrance that the applicant would like to not save, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe as part of right-of-way acquisition for the Webbridge Corridor project, if the tree exists and they have to take it for the project, then the city would then have to compensate and or replant. But if the tree is not there anymore, that does not apply. Is that correct?
If the city was taking, if city needed right away and it took out a particular tree, that city project wouldn't necessarily have to recompense for that tree necessarily, but as part of the compensation to the property owner for taking that right away, that might be part of what is negotiated in the taking of the property.
So compensation
Yes.
for replanting. But if
It
it's
could
already
be.
gone, you get nothing for it.
Correct.
Thank you.
The other point, just to piggyback on that, if it's gone today because the applicant believes when the web bridge widening takes place, the root ball will be impacted, and we take that tree away today, and the applicant's wrong, tree's gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
To be honest with you, I'm not really concerned about the two trees that the applicant has identified as being in the right-of-way and potentially impacting by the roadway project. I think it's a good point that they would be impacted. This is the applicant's, this is the site plan that was sent over late this evening. There's an X here, and there's an X here. This X is clearly in the public right-of-way. And that will 100% be impacted. So will this one at this location would be impacted. But I don't know that I have enough information based on just receiving this late this evening as to why this tree should be impacted and if the city arborist would be fine with that, as well as this tree here. I believe this one is the largest of the four trees that they're now showing to be removed. I think it's a pine. I think there was maybe a redbud, and then the other two were dogwoods. The dogwood and the redbud are fairly small, so they're going to have pretty small critical root zones. So I don't know if it's a possibility of saving these. I have a feeling that when they grade the site to install the new cul-de-sac road, that it's potentially the grading in close proximity to this road that could potentially impact that tree, and that's why it's being X'd out. But again, we just haven't had enough time to review this. I did count the number of trees and giving the applicant the benefit of the doubt of these trees that are kind of right on the shared property line here. If these four are removed, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 on-site tree saves on an almost 8-acre property. So we would appreciate a little bit, it would be our recommendation to leave that condition as is and maybe work with the applicant between now and council should they be recommended to move forward to work through those issues.
I agree with that position, so we can move forward. The way it looks to me, that the major issue, and you can take your seat back unless anybody has a question for Michael.
Well, I do one more. So we talked a lot about the retention pond, stormwater management, aesthetically pleasing, but the shape of it, I mean, I think a lot of that can't be determined until you finish the hydrology. It's a best guess at this point, right? And this is kind of we hope it's not bigger than this, and it could be smaller. One of the things that I'm concerned about is in condition 1, we're saying substantially similar to site plan. But if we get that study back and then we're changing the shape of the stormwater facility and all that comes in, at what point does it kick back? Or is it staff is going to work with those conditions and try to figure it out with that hydrology study when they come back with another design?
Yeah, so substantially similar. These are concept plans. So these are not detailed site plans that are going through the land disturbance review process. So it is a concept plan. Changes can occur. It is intended with that condition that this plan be substantially similar, that there wouldn't be additional lots added to this. Mm-hmm. If there are code requirements that are identified during the land disturbance permit process, it could result in a lot having to go away in order to meet code and still generally have the same site layout that is substantially similar. If this common lot for the stormwater detention area needs to get larger, they will have to, the applicant's engineer will have to look at that and make some slight adjustments. This is R zoning. It requires minimum 1 acre, and these lots are very close to 1 acre as they stand. So if there are substantial changes because of the hydrology study that affect this site plan, the applicant would have to bring it back. If they're approved, they would have to bring that back to council to change those conditions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know that the staff does work with our applicants to try to get all that in once the studies are back, because that's still an unknown.
Yes, and we do, and there are slight changes to site plans, but we wouldn't approve a site plan that resulted in additional lots or additional density. That would definitely be a conflict to that
And it would
site
have to
plan.
adhere to the conditions we're talking about.
Yes.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question about the addendum. What was the wording on the addendum for number 9, the stormwater management that was put
I was
forth?
just about to address it before the last question. The way I see this, the issues are around the stormwater facility. There is a hazardous tree that needs to be removed, and especially with the aesthetics of the pond. With respect to the specimen trees, I would say leave the condition as is, as you said, and work with the applicant before council meeting. I'm assuming that's condition 15.
Yes.
Correct. And then do you work with the applicant before then? I received what you actually put on the screen, and I've got several notes on it, so I'm trying to guide the board with respect to what I would recommend you considered when you make a motion. And the first one applies to condition number 9, that state stormwater management facility shall be an amenity and continues. What I would recommend or suggest is we can say stormwater management facility shall be an amenity to the development, period. And start a new sentence, developer shall work with adjacent neighbors to make the stormwater management facility aesthetically pleasing, in parentheses, no walls other than bank, and screened with evergreens with final approval by staff. Don't know whether you can remember that, but I can definitely share it.
I'm sorry, Chairman, did it specify earthen bank?
Yeah, and then we'll move the next sentence that Michael had suggested. I wish we had copies of this, Michael. Dragonfly attracting plants shall be utilized around the pond as a means of mosquito control. To make that a separate sentence at the end of the list that you had provided, and I'll go through that list. At a minimum, an aesthetically pleasing stormwater facility shall include A, a variety of water-loving vegetation planted in and around the pond, B, a pond design that is attractive when empty, no muddy areas that would promote mosquitoes and unpleasant smells, and C, a natural and organic shape to the pond. That is the recommended change or amendment to condition 9 as shown here. I'm sure Alexandra was typing it up. Okay. Condition number 10 regards the slowing down of the stormwater runoff. As agreed by the developer, the rate of stormwater runoff shall be slowed by, Michael added by 10% over the current flow. I think that would be too much of a burden to put on the developer. I would add by 10% if feasible over the current flow from the pond to neighboring properties. And the reason I say it's a big burden, 10% is significant and may not be achievable, but we're saying if feasible, and that's on the current flow. But that's for the board to consider. The next one, you added 21 and 22. If fencing is utilized around the stormwater facility, fencing shall be 5-board horse fence to match the fence required around the Webb Bridge Road. That was condition 21.
Just to clarify, you said if, right?
If fencing is utilized, correct. And 22, as agreed by the developer, I think there was a typo there. Developer shall remove the large hazardous tree leaning toward 121 Westchester Way. I'll be happy to share this with whoever makes the motion. You may not be able to read my handwriting.
Did we, Chairman, did we change condition 2 to add 75% or more? Todd, did we add that?
Yes, condition 3.
We did?
Well, we
did not.
I would recommend that we,
There is no motion yet, so
Okay.
whoever makes the motion can make that recommendation.
Okay.
When you make the motion, you can refer to what I said, or you can ask me to read it.
Do you want me to do it? I'll do it. I recommend to approve PH-22-04/Z-22-04, the Bridges Webb Bridge Road, with the conditions as stated by the chairman, as the conditions are stated and recommended by staff. And we are also going to add to condition 3 shall be primarily 75% or more brick or stone as approved by staff.
second.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? And I want to state, when we make a motion is made, before we vote, make sure you understand what you're voting. So if you have any questions, this is the time to discuss before you vote on it. I believe this is a good, significant improvement to the previous, what we approved in terms of conditions, and it seems to me, or appears to me, that the applicant is willing to work with the neighbors to make this a good development. And what I added in condition 9 is he will work with you. Staff will have the final approval. That's what I was asking, whether they had any that they had approved that is aesthetically pleasing. It's very hard to define that. That's why it has to be done on a case-by-case basis, depending on the circumstances. But I have every confidence that that's going to happen in this case. If there are no further comments or in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. It's going to be heard by City Council on June the 27th. It took almost an hour and a half on that application. We have 3 more. Second agenda item is MP-21-11/Bridge Road Holdings, LLC. Michael, thank you for joining us tonight, those who are leaving.
One down.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The next item before you, the applicant is Bridge Road Holdings, LLC. They're requesting a master plan amendment to allow for the construction of a 2-story, 19,000 square foot medical office over retail building and a 1-story, 1,950 square foot medical office building on 2.45 acres. Amendment is requested to the Preston Ridge master plan to add the property to Pod M of that master plan, which allows office institutional uses as well as retail uses that support office and institutional uses. I do have the location map up on the overhead. The property is located at 11505 Morris Road and 0 State Bridge Road near the southeast corner of Old Milton Parkway in Morris Road. Property is zoned, actually before we go to that, this is an better looking aerial of the property which sits in this general location. This is the Waffle House on the adjacent property. Property zoned O&I, office institutional. It's mostly undeveloped. Morris Road was extended through the property in this location here. Morris Road right-of-way is in this location. However, due to the proximity to the off-ramp from Georgia 400, Several years back, when the assisted living facility that is further to the south was developed, the right-of-way was moved over here to the existing light at the wall between the Waffle House and the gas station here. At the time that Morse Road was extended through this property, there was a small parking lot that was added to the property that is before you today. So this parking lot is not on the Waffle House property, but it was constructed to be shared with the Waffle House for overflow parking for them. The Quick Trip gas station is located to the north of the site. Of course, I mentioned the Waffle House and the Shell gas station. As well as Life Hope Alpharetta are located to the east. There's floodplain to the west and undeveloped property to the south. Preston Ridge, I've got, well, before we get into this discussion of Preston Ridge, this is a view of the property from Old Milton Parkway. If you look through here, this is the old Morse Road right away, and you can see where the road kind of curves around and leads back to the assisted living facility. Preston Ridge was approved in 1987. It's a 500-acre mixed-use development. I have a map of the entire Preston Ridge master plan. This is Old Milton Parkway here, and this is North Point Parkway coming through that development, Webbridge Road up here, just to orient you. Pod M is located here, south of Old Milton Parkway. And the Waffle House property is the last or western portion of that particular pod. So the access to this applicant that is before you this evening, access to that site is actually through Pod M, and it is contiguous to Pod M. With respect to this master plan, there are no limitations on the percentage of retail use that's allowed within that particular overall development, other than the maximum non-residential density that's allowed within that master plan. At this pod, it's no more than 18,000 square feet per acre. However, outside of this master plan, the zoning of this property, O&I, would limit retail to no more than 25%. So that's why the applicant is asking for the master plan amendment to allow it to be brought into this master plan. They're proposing, of course, one level of the large building to be all retail with office above, so it's going to be more than 25%. So that is the gist of the request that's before you. This is the applicant's site plan. As I mentioned, this is the two-story, 19,000 square foot retail over office over retail building. And then this is the small, just under 2,000 square foot medical office building down here. Both properties, they're separated by Morris Road. There's parking on both, serving both properties. This is referred to as Building A in the staff report, and this is Building B. Building A is served by 91 parking spaces. Building B is served by 8 parking spaces. The applicant, since they made their original submittal, revised the site plan to add in tree save areas. So there are a number of significant specimen trees on this particular property. So they did add a pretty significant, pretty large tree save area here in the parking lot. There's another small one at this location. And then there are multiple tree saves on the southern portion of the property near the small medical office building. They are showing underground detention within the parking lot above Morris Road, and then there is a walled pond on the southern piece of the property. The uses on the property would generate approximately 35 a.m. peak hour trips and 75 p.m. peak hour trips. We reviewed this against the review criteria for master plan amendment. We believe the proposed use would be compatible with the office, institutional, and accessory retail uses that are approved within this master plan and other locations for this type of business, which are typically found along commercial corridors or office parks. And as I noted before, this request is related to the fact that the O&I zoning only allows up to 25% retail, and that's why they are requesting that the property be incorporated into the Preston Ridge master plan to allow for additional retail use. This item was shown to the public at the community zoning meeting on February 9th. There were no public comments. And staff is recommending approval of this request. Condition 1 states the 2.45 acre property shall be added to Pod M of Preston Ridge Master Plan and limited to medical and professional office. No more than 9,500 square feet of accessory retail, limited to the following uses, and we list A through O retail uses. We believe these are the type of uses that would be supportive of users of the nearby office and institutional uses. These were also retail uses that were identified as being allowed within that Pod M of the master plan. Condition 2, site shall be developed substantially as depicted on the submitted site plan labeled Exhibit A, except for modifications required to comply with the conditions below and subject to meeting all city code requirements and conditions of zoning. 3, trees shall be saved as depicted on the submitted site plan, again labeled Exhibit A as approved by staff. 4, building A shall have a minimum 20-foot height along Old Milton Parkway. Exterior building material shall be comparable to materials on nearby Preston Ridge office buildings with final approval by DRB. 5, developer shall construct a 6-foot sidewalk along the east side of the old Morris Road right-of-way, connecting the Old Milton Parkway sidewalk to the Morris Road sidewalk. So that would be from the sidewalk along Old Milton Parkway, connecting through the old portion of the right-of-way, connecting through here. Condition 6, building shall connect to the public sidewalk system. Condition 7, developer shall coordinate with the city and GDOT to provide the required landscape material and the 20-foot landscape strip along Old Milton Parkway. 8, wall signs visible from Old Milton Parkway shall be limited to signage permitted for an office building and shall be for an office tenant. Condition 9, property owner shall dedicate Morris Road to the city as public right-of-way. And that concludes the report. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions for Michael?
I have one quick one. On the wall sign, how is the applicant going to be, how do you visibly see the sign? Is it over there will it be off Morris Road?
So this site would be permitted a monument sign, so they could, I would assume that they'll put some type of monument signage along Old Milton Parkway. The condition that discussed the wall sign, that is related to Building A, so the building that is closest to Old Milton Parkway. So they'll have an allowance for wall signage on this building facing Old Milton Parkway.
So then the retail would be more the monument, or will be?
It could be, yeah. So the idea is that we really don't, and as evidenced in kind of limiting the retail uses that would be allowed here, we were trying not to promote a situation where we would have a series of wall signage along the road here. And
that restriction does not necessarily apply to that smaller building. That's only the one that's facing on Old Milton Parkway. Because there's an additional office building on the bottom corner.
Correct, and this office building would have certain sign allowances, but again, the wall signage would have to be on a wall of this building.
Okay.
It's less concerning since that's not going to really be visible from Old Milton Parkway.
Michael, we still have a limit of 4 signed placards or whatever, retailers for a monument sign?
That is in our code, yes, no more than 4 tenant signs within a monument sign.
Okay, so, and how visible will anything of this unit be from the street?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand that.
I'm wondering if someone's not on the monument sign, and we have a retail location in this building, is it at all visible from Old Milton Parkway?
No, so the signage for the retailers would be on the first floor of this building, so they could have signage interior to this development that would be visible from Morse Road. But none of that signage on the fronts of this building would be visible from Old Milton Parkway. The only sign that could be visible would be the sign that's referenced in condition number 8 that would be limited to an office tenant. So an office tenant on the second floor of this building technically could have a signage on this side of the building facing Old Milton Parkway.
Understood, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation.
Well, good evening. Good to see some of you. I probably didn't expect to see me on this side of the dais, and really I didn't either. So I'm here tonight representing Bridge Holdings, who's has a pretty strong connection to a client I've had for a long time. So I'm not changing my real estate practice for zoning practice, but I am here tonight representing the applicant. And the situation, which doesn't come across in the applicant, it's kind of a pretty cool idea. We have a husband and wife. They're here today. And you've got one side, which of course is the retail on the bottom. You got medical office on top. That's more of the investment side of it. But the other side, the smaller building, building B, maybe it should be building A, because Dr. Yusuf is here. She's an endodontist, and so that's really kind of the dream, is for her to have her practice in her own space, in her own building, as part of this larger plan. So we have asked. Now it is to be part of the Preston Ridge master plan. We're familiar with the conditions that staff have recommended. We are in agreement with all the conditions, and with that, be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Oh, short and sweet.
I'm sorry?
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. I like it.
Yes. Any questions?
No, I think it's I think it's a wonderful plan. The topography is challenging. I think they've done a good job of doing the best they can and working with the topography and saving as many trees and the underground detention. So, yeah, I think it looks good.
I'm a fan of the Waffle House, and having medical office there might allow for immediate treatment if necessary.
That's right.
It's a unique piece of property, and I think that some creative solutions, and definitely like all the tree saves. So good job.
Yeah, that's very good. All right, well, there are no questions for you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm going to open this up for public comments. Anyone would like to speak in favor, please come forward. Seeing none, and in opposition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the meeting, the public meeting portion, and turn this over to the board for discussion and or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve MP-21-11 Bridge Road Holdings, LLC, Preston Ridge, subject to the following conditions as noted by staff.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. It goes before council on the 27th.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I know you're glad it wasn't an hour and a half.
That was about 15 minutes.
Good job.
Does the board need a break? All right, 5 minutes, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Two down, two more to go.
We're just halfway.
That was easy.
This meeting is in order. The next item on the agenda is Z-22-08/V-22-12/South of Wales Park. Michael is having to do a lot tonight with Kathy absent.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The next item, the applicant is AAI South Main. They're requesting a rezoning and variances to allow for the construction of 55 for-sale townhomes on 5.54 acres in the downtown overlay. Rezoning is requested from C1 Neighborhood Commercial and LI Light Industrial to downtown mixed use. And variances are requested to allow up to about 15 townhomes to be front-loaded, reduce minimum driveway length on up to 17 townhome units, allow encroachments into the undisturbed buffers, allow a 0-foot setback for a subdivision sign, and eliminate and reduce landscape strips along South Main Street and new private streets. The applicant has acknowledged that I believe that they're fine with the eliminating the variance requests to eliminate the landscape strip along South Main Street. They're not requesting that. I do have the location map on the overhead. The property is located at 0 State Highway near the southeast corner of Highway 9 and Wills Road. Proposed density on this is 9.93 dwelling units per acre. This is the property here. It's an undeveloped property, obviously heavily wooded. The Xavier and Sons Auto Body Shop that used to be Carsmetic several years back is located to the north and west of this site. City of Roswell is located to the west. That's the Ferrari dealership to the west. Public storage facilities located to the east, and Georgia Power is located to the south. Georgia Power is also City of Roswell. Atlanta Saddlery, Auto Bright Car Wash, and the Porch on South Main are located to the north of this property. The future land use designation of this property is mixed use, which allows the proposed zoning and density. Property is situated between 3 commercial properties, which lends to the hardship related to the requested variances on the site. It also has multiple road frontages. It's got significant topography. It does drop off pretty quickly as you go from South Main Street and go south. This topography drops off. In addition, Wills Road right-of-way. So the right-of-way line, I'll come back to these street views. I'll just show you this before we move on. So the right-of-way line on Wills Road comes all the way up to the existing property line. It's set back from the property line, or right-of-way line is actually set back from the edge of the travel lane of the road about 60 feet. And it's maybe a little bit difficult to see here, but the overall gating or fencing around the development, of course, is right on the property line. And they are proposing that their subdivision sign be on a portion of the wall or fencing as shown here in this rendering. So we're okay with that particular variance request to reduce the subdivision sign setback. And as I mentioned, we didn't believe that the variance was necessary to eliminate the landscape strip along South Main Street. And I believe the applicant's in agreement with that as well. That basically, we have a condition that this switchback here, the switchback sidewalk that's here because of the topography is not necessary, and we have a solution for that if there are folks that use bicycles in order to get up to the street, and I'll discuss that here shortly. Of course, we looked at the density of this development as well as comparing it to other densities that have been approved in the downtown overlay. It is consistent with densities that have been approved under this zoning district. So DTMU allows up to 10 units per acre. They're asking for, think it was 9.93. We've had other developments that have been approved along South Main Street, specifically the Maxwell and Mayfair on Main, and they are above 10 units per acre at those locations. Going back to the site plan here, as I mentioned, this is 55 townhomes. They're 3- and 4-story buildings. When looking at all the townhome buildings, they will have the appearance of 4 stories. However, the way that we measure height along the roadways, including along South Main Street and Wills. As you'll see when I go back to the elevation, the townhomes actually have the appearance of being shorter. So as measured from South Main Street, they only have the appearance of a 3-story. And again, that's because of the topography on this portion of the property. The applicant proposes a network of private streets and alleys within this development. Most of the townhomes are rear-loaded. There's some that are front-loaded due to this cutout in the property. It makes it difficult to lay out the site, so there are some front-loaded townhomes, but the majority are rear-loaded as required by code. 5 of the townhomes are about 24 feet wide. The remaining will be 26 feet wide. There are an extensive series of sidewalks through the development, coming around the perimeter of the development and connecting into the sidewalks along Wills Road, as well as along South Main Street. All the townhomes will have 2 side-by-side parking spaces within the garage. One of the variants that the applicant is requesting is to reduce the minimum driveway length of these townhomes only. So just these would have driveways that are less than 18 feet. They're about anywhere from 12 to 14 feet is what they're proposing. Typically, we wouldn't be supportive of a variance request like that. We've experienced a lot of problems in the downtown with parking. However, the main purpose that we included the requirement for the minimum 18-foot long driveway is to accommodate some additional guest parking spaces. And so the applicant, in order to offsite the request to allow a reduced driveway length on these, I believe it was 17 units, 17 units. So they have provided an additional 24 on-street guest parking spaces throughout the development. Those are pretty much concentrated around the units with the shorter driveways here, as well as along this road. There's on-street parking. So downtown code requires 138 parking spaces for this development. They've got approximately 210 parking spaces within the development. They're proposing about 21.5% of open space within this development, about 1.2 acres. There's a clubhouse and pool in this location here. Central green, as I mentioned, the sidewalks provide an amenity through the development as well. We are recommending that this switchback for bicycles be removed here. It's just unnecessary impervious area. They are showing a stairway up to South Main Street, and we do have a condition that would require a groove for a bicycle wheel be placed adjacent to the stairs so that someone with a bicycle can walk their stairs up the stairs. There are 12 tree saves depicted on this plan. They are showing undisturbed buffers in this location here adjacent to the auto body shop. The auto body shop on their portion of the property has an undisturbed buffer at the back of the property already, and they're also showing undisturbed buffer in this location adjacent to the commercial. There is buffering on the adjacent public storage property. I don't know that this is platted buffering, but there is buffering as that site is constructed today. They are showing a underground stormwater facility, and that is under this amenity green here that is between 2 rows of townhomes. They are also showing underground stormwater in this road here. Typically, we would have concern with that just in case there was an issue with that underground stormwater facility and it needed to be maintained, of blocking access to the homes. However, in this case, we're not concerned with that because there are alternative ways to get to each of these homes. So if this is blocked off, there are no driveways in this section of the street, and you can always come up and around to get access to the other townhomes. These are just, I forgot to come back to these. These are just some street view of the site. So this is at Wills Road looking at the site here with the trees. This is the George Power site that's in City of Roswell here, and South Main Street is up here. This is at the intersection looking towards the site. This is that auto body shop right here with the applicant's property behind it. And this is just a view of the property from South Main Street, kind of reminds you of what's out there today. This is with the GDOT project underway. And then these are the renderings that were provided by the applicant. Again, they're showing, you can see here, because of the topography, these 4-story buildings on the backside, they are 4 stories, but as you look at these from South Main Street here, they're technically 3 stories. You can see from Wills Road, this is the view. This is a 4-story product. It does have rooftop decks. This is done in the Federal and Greek Revival styles. Did send this to the downtown consultant for review. They did agree that it matches approved styles in the downtown. Had a few minor comments. Those would be addressed prior to design review board approval. According to the applicant, these units are ranging inside from approximately 2,600 to 4,000 square feet. Could be a little bit larger. Probably, the application indicated 3 bedrooms, but they could have some 4 bedrooms, according to a recent conversation with the applicant. Price points listed in the application were from $850,000 to $1 million. The 55 townhome units would generate approximately 24 AM peak hour trips and 29 PM peak hour trips. And of course, looking at the application against the established review criteria for rezoning and variance, we do believe that the zoning proposal is consistent with the vision in the downtown. It's also consistent with the future land use designation of the property. This area, of course, is envisioned to redevelop into a mixed-use environment with mixed uses as well as single uses. Those could be just residential by itself, commercial by itself, developments. And of course, the proposed density we looked at, and it does mirror other densities approved along this corridor and in the DTMU district. We do have an LCI supplemental study that we've kicked off for the South Main Street area. We're looking at studying that area to see, to determine if there's a separate identity. It is different from the rest of the downtown, so we're looking at that now. Safety improvements along the road, better connectivity over to Wills Park. So that's what we're looking at. As it relates to the applicant's variance request, we do believe that there are some exceptional conditions on the property. Of course, being sandwiched between several commercial properties, the multiple road frontages, the topography, explain the situation with the right-of-way along Wills Park, and our not having concerns with the subdivision sign, having that 0-foot setback. The only thing we did not support, of course, as I mentioned, to eliminate any landscape strip requirements along South Main Street. This was shown to the Community Zoning Information Meeting on May 11th. There were some public comments. Comments were concerns over traffic, guest parking, GDOT project impacts, safety issues with pedestrians crossing at South Main Street to Wills Park. So that last one is a concern of ours as well. We think that anyone that's going to want to live here will want to utilize Wills Park, which is a great asset in this corridor. So we do have a condition that we are recommending that would require some enhanced pedestrian crosswalk across South Main Street to allow folks to get over to Wills Park. Staff did not receive any correspondence from the public regarding this request. With that, we are recommending approval of the applicant's request and denial of the variance request to eliminate the landscape strip along South Main Street. And it's subject to several conditions. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition rezoning it to DTMU and limiting to the site plan prepared by Pond dated 5/10/22. 2 is the architecture and materials condition relating it to the rendering that I showed. The rendering is dated 5/5/22 with final compliance with the downtown consultant's comments and in compliance with the downtown code, final approval by DRB. And four-sided architecture and materials. 3, density shall not exceed 9.93 dwelling units per acre. 4, building height shall not exceed 4 stories and 50 feet. Up to 60 feet is allowed within the zoning district. 5, townhomes shall have direct vehicular access from a street or alley as depicted on the site plan prepared by Pond 5/10/22. 6, courtyards may encroach into landscape strips subject to meeting the minimum landscape material requirements as approved by staff. Now, they're not showing courtyards on any of these townhomes, but we have had a similar condition on other townhomes allowed in the downtown. As long as we're getting the required landscape material, we don't necessarily mind if it's within a courtyard or outside the courtyard. 7, developer has to do with the developer improving the Wills Road streetscape, and it has the requirements for the planter and sidewalk and decorative lighting. Condition 8, streets and alleys shall be developed as depicted on the site plan prepared by Pond dated 5/10/22. That condition also talks about decorative pedestrian lighting throughout the development and maintenance of the internal streets and alleys by those be private and maintained by the HOA. Condition 9, landscape strips shall be required in areas behind the sidewalk and along both sides of internal streets, not including alleys. Landscape strips shall be exclusive of utilities and easements, except that if Fulton County requires an unencumbered easement, shrubs shall replace tree requirements on one side of the street. We've been adding in that last sentence to conditions because Fulton County, we've recently encountered some issues with Fulton County wanting exclusive easements for their water lines. Condition 10, landscape strip along South Main Street and Wills Road shall be planted with shade trees as a continuation of what has been planted and designed in the downtown, and outside utility easements and overhead utilities as approved by staff. Subdivision decorative fencing and columns may be placed within the landscape strip along South Main Street as approved by staff. Condition 11, developer shall provide enhanced pedestrian crossing at South Main Street and Wills Road, which shall include color pavement markings and signage as approved by GDOT and staff. So this is a GDOT right-of-way. So anything that is done and the pavement markings would have to be approved by GDOT. And that improvement is off-site. It is eligible for impact fee credits. 12, undisturbed buffers replanted where sparse shall be provided as depicted on the site plan by Pond dated 5/10/22. Evergreen trees and shrubs shall be planted along the south and east property lines and along the property line north of units 6 through 13 as approved by staff. 13, property owner acknowledges that redevelopment of the properties to the northeast and south with non-residential uses shall not require a buffer adjacent to the subject property. 14, project entrance shall be gated and shall include a decorative paver, apron, landscaping, brick wall, and fencing with columns substantially similar to the submitted renderings dated 5/5/22. 15, allows the subdivision sign to have a 0-foot setback as shown on those renderings. 16 is the open space requirement as shown on the plan by Pond dated 5/10. 17, creeping vines shall be planted to cover retaining and low walls as approved by staff. 18 is the tree save condition, so relating back to the approved site plan. Condition 19, fences and walls visible from the public right-of-way shall be decorative as approved by staff. Unfinished wood fences and decks shall not be visible from the street. 20, HVAC or similar equipment shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. 21 deals with the fire access. 22 addresses the stormwater management facilities being placed underground. Because this is located in that right-of-way internal to the site, we do want to make sure that that's identified within the final subdivision plat, and that the maintenance responsibilities are addressed within that plat as it relates to that facility. 23, garbage pickup shall be from within the development, and 24 limits the units to no more than 10% being rented. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
I think you answered all of mine as you went through the conditions, so I have no questions at this time.
Michael, I had a couple quick, easy questions. Is it appropriate at this point in the life cycle of an application like this to anticipate the likelihood that owners of the units adjoining the auto body shop will develop concerns about noise?
I don't think so, and why I say that is we do have a noise ordinance, so there's, both properties would be subject to noise ordinance. Of course, it is adjacent to an auto body shop. We're going to have that in a commercial corridor like this where we have a redevelopment plan and we're trying to incorporate residential. There are going to be, at the beginning, there could be potential residential uses adjacent to heavier commercial uses. But I believe that the noise ordinance will deal with that, and the folks that will end up buying here will see who their neighbors are as well.
Okay. Second item, having to do with the requirement that I see on a lot of these applications, about 10% of the residential units shall be permitted to be rented. I recognize that there is a lot of challenge administratively around enforcing that. What sort of options have you guys seen from city perspective on how best to try to enforce?
Well, we feel like, the end of that sentence that requires them to incorporate it into their HOA covenants and declarations, their HOA basically will enforce this for us. So they're subject to putting that, per this condition as written, they're subject to putting that in their HOA conditions.
FYI, HOA, not really a capability. Yeah. POA, possibly.
Yeah. So we've not really had, that's not been an issue that we've had a lot of complaints or concerns voiced to us. So we're not getting phone calls stating that my neighborhood is over the max 10% or anything like that. But you do bring up a good point. It is a difficult thing for the city to enforce. But should we find out that they were out of compliance, we do have a condition that we can hold them to.
Thank you.
Michael, I just have two quick questions. On condition number 11, I got to be honest, when I drove this, the thought of crossing that road on foot, go at your own will. But first of all, if we're really trying to put that connectivity in, GDOT didn't have a crosswalk planned already?
So they will put in a crosswalk there, and it'll be the typical white piano key crosswalk that you usually see. What we're going to be looking for is a lot of times you'll see in bike lanes, for example, they'll use the green painting, so the different color paint on there. What we did at the Atlee, which is the Providence Group townhome development that is right across from DeVore on Haynes Bridge. So that also has a piano key at that location, but there was a requirement for an enhanced pedestrian crossing there. What they will be doing is they'll be adding green paint at the end of those white piano keys. There's something about making it different than the typical pedestrian crosswalk that makes pedestrians feel a little bit more comfortable, and it alerts vehicles that are traveling through that road. So it'll be something similar to that. Now, depending on when this development kicks off and the South Main Street LCI project finishes, there could be additional design to the pedestrian crosswalks. If you remember with the North Point Creative Placemaking Plan, we had the leaf pattern in the pedestrian crosswalks to kind of identify and help. It's doing two things. It's enhancing the crosswalk, but it's also branding the area with something. That will probably be a little bit more difficult to get in this particular location since it's a GDOT right-of-way. But we do think that there's something there that can enhance it beyond just the typical piano keys.
And then tagging on to that, so the sidewalk improvements that are mentioned in the conditions, that's only for the piece of property where they have their entrance. That doesn't go up the auto body. So it's going to be a partial improvement, gap, crosswalk. Kind of the way I visualize this.
Yeah, so there is existing, so off their site, from here to this point, there is some existing sidewalk there. It is narrow and it is off-site. There's not much area for anyone to work in. We had originally asked the applicant about increasing the width of the sidewalk through this section here. And they did make some valid points that there's really not the space requirements available in order to do that. So it may be something that we have to the city may need to come back and look at improving this section here. And there wouldn't be any prohibition against if the applicant was able to figure it out with this property owner and increase this, they could do it and we would give them impact fee credits for that improvement.
No.
But we didn't specifically include it in the conditions because it's limited.
Yeah. Okay. As we look at all these new developments going in, it does get very piecemealed. And we know that there's a plan, and we hope, and we desire down the road, but sometimes we're stuck with lots with no sidewalks for a long, long time. So, thanks.
We used to call pedestrian crossings zebra crossings when I was growing up in Kenya. They look like a zebra.
I have a quick question on the site plan. I think I have the right site plan dated 5/10, but it has required variances on it. I don't think I've ever seen a site plan that has that on that, but are we okay? I mean, are we okay with what is on the site plan here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine that they list their variances on here. That is not unusual. I believe I've definitely seen concept plans with a public hearing that list their variances or other non-site specific items.
So these are okay with what we have conditioned. I guess that's what I'm making sure.
Yeah, because there are conditions, any conditions that would be in conflict with those, the condition would take precedent.
Our condition overrides it? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Michael, have I missed that where the part about eliminating the proposed stairs, is that in the conditions here?
It is in the conditions, and I probably skimmed over it for the sake of time. Let me find it real quick, just so that I can point it out to you. Thank you for pointing that out. Is it the open space?
Number 16, that's it.
There we go.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, the
thank you.
open space. Yeah, so let me just read through 16 because I think it's a good point to bring up. So 16 is the open space condition. It points to that site plan prepared by Pond dated 5/10. And then it goes on to say, except that the optional bicycle path in the civic space shall be removed and stairs shall accommodate a bicycle wheel path as approved by staff. We've seen these all over the Beltline in downtown Atlanta. They work really great, and they result in a lot less impervious area than a actual paved switchback would.
If there are no further questions, we ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation. Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Kathy Sickert with Smith, Gambrell, and Russell. It's a pleasure to be here with you always. Nice to see those of you who I know already. I look forward to working with those of you who I have not yet met. So this is a great night to say hi. As usual, Michael said everything I was going to say, so I don't have a whole lot to add. He always does such a thorough job that it's sort of, my notes just, I keep checking them off because he's already said that. But I want to make a few points. And the first one is, can you put the site plan back up? Thank you, Mike. Okay. If you'll notice, the reason I want to point this out is because our property line is well internal to this site off of Wills Road. And it's actually the city of Roswell that owns that area, and I think that's the area where the sidewalk is, if I'm not mistaken, which means we don't probably have to get permission from the adjacent property owner to be able to improve that if it's improvable. It's entirely up to the city of Roswell. We just realized this, I think, Monday when we were talking through the conditions, and it became apparent that we need to reach out to Roswell and figure out what they will allow us to do and not to do. But if they will allow us and it's possible to make it wider, we're certainly happy to do that. We're incentivized to do it. It's a swap of fees for impact fee credits. So we will be perfectly happy to make that commitment if the city will allow us to do it. We have had preliminary conversations, at least my engineers have, and they don't seem to see a problem with what we want to do out there. So there will be a connection even if we can't improve that sidewalk, because there's a small one there now, but we will try to endeavor to make it wider. And the other thing I wanted to point out, in addition to the green paint on the zebra or the piano keys or whatever you want to call it, I like them raised because it sort of acts as a speed hump. I don't know if GDOT would go for that on a state highway, maybe at this location because of where the intersection is and the attractiveness of Wills Park, they might. And again, I can't commit to that because it would require GDOT approval, but we are happy to ask and we will certainly do that. So I just wanted to let you know that. The other thing I want to point out is that we started this process a long, long time ago, so long ago that it was, well, Karen was on the council then and not here. Lots of new faces on the council that weren't there back then. But it became apparent when I went in, and I always meet with people ahead of time to make sure that the staff thinks this is something that could work before I even file an application. And when I went in, I was informed that, in fact, South Main Street was going to be the subject of a study, much like was done at North Point, and that a lot of the same bells and whistles that would be in the North Point ordinance were likely to be put here. And since I was so involved in the North Point overlay ordinance and a number of the projects that are in it, I took that to heart in terms of trying to help my client design this project. So among other things, for example, a minimum of 7 echo points is always required for a project like this in the overlay. We've got it here. Part of that's the underground detention, part of it's the enhanced bicycle facilities, part of it is the extra green space. So we have it here because I anticipate that that's what's going to come into play. And again, I assure you that if they come up with something like the leaves that are actually making those crosswalks right attractive in North Point, we will do that here as well. So we fully intend to cooperate with the city in recognition of the fact that a focus is now being placed on this portion of the city in order to develop exactly what we want to put here. And with that said, in response to your question about, somebody asked about parking. When I started this, the first thing that Karen Richards said to me is, don't you give me short driveways unless you also give me plenty of guest parking spaces. So when it became apparent that the layout of this property was going to require, there's 13 units that have the smaller driveways, not 17, was going to require that, we did pay a great deal of attention to providing guest parking spaces. And we have 28 on site, which is well more than the vast majority of complexes in this city do. So we tried to be, we tried to adapt as much as we could to what we were expecting to hear and in fact did hear. And with that said, I'd ask you to accept the staff recommendation. And if you want to add something about these commitments that I'm making, assuming it's approvable, I'm happy for you to do that as well. Or I'll make the same representation at the city council, or Michael and I can work on it to add the conditions between now and then. So I would ask your approval as well. Thank you.
Thank you. You're very accommodating tonight.
I'm in a mood.
Any questions?
I just got one. I need clarity, I think, on condition 10 and whether or not the applicant is still asking for a variance on the 10-foot landscape strip along Highway 9.
No, we are not. We fixed it, and in fact, quite frankly, another thing that we did when we got that comment, because I read the conditions wrong, is I went back and looked at the landscape strips around the entirety of the property, and I made all those 10 feet. We had to shorten some units, but I actually fixed that. So we're in good shape on that.
And also, just so I ask it explicitly, all the other 23 conditions the applicant is good with?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Right.
I try.
All right. I'm going to open this for public comments. Anyone in favor, please come forward. Seeing none, anyone in opposition? None in favor, none in opposition. Well, I will turn this over to the board for a motion and or discussion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. And just a couple comments before I do. I want to give kudos to the applicant for working with the city staff on this and being in agreement on 24 conditions. It's not easy. I think it's a great and beautiful product. I think it's a major improvement to the area. I think it's consistent. I like that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use for South Main and making that more mixed use, less commercial, more residential. And then all the other things that you've agreed to are fantastic. So with that, I just want to make a motion that we approve MP-22-06 let me correct that. I move that we approve Z-22-08/V-22-12 /South of Wills Park in accordance with the conditions as read by Mr. Woodman.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. Goes before council on the 27th. All right. The next item on the agenda is MP-22-06/CR-UP-22-01/Z-22-07/V-22-11 Visa Homes. Michael? Kathy is going to take you to dinner when she comes back.
I will tell her that you said that.
We'll put that in the conditions.
Oh, my thing froze.
All right, thank you again, Chairman and Commissioners. This is the last item before you this evening. Beazer Homes is requesting a comprehensive land use plan amendment, master plan amendment, rezoning, and variances to allow for the construction of 43 for-sale townhomes. That would be on 6.2 acres, and this is in the North Point overlay. Master plan amendment is requested to add dwelling for sale attached to the list of permitted uses in the Delta Credit Union master plan. So there was a previous approval for a master plan on this property. It was Delta Credit Union Bank and some office that was entitled there. They're also asking for a rezoning of the property from O&I Office Institutional to R8A/D. They're asking, in order to utilize that zoning, they're asking to change the future land use of the property from corporate office to high-density residential. And they do have some variances to modify North Point overlay site regulations with regard to setback, sidewalk, planter, building height, as well as block and access regulation, dead-end streets, vehicular cross-access, and gating. I do have the location map on the overhead. This property is located at the northeast corner of Haynes Bridge Road and Rock Mill Road, right at George 400. Proposed density with this development is 6.94 dwelling units per acre. As you can see on the location map, this is an undeveloped wooded property. It's zoned O&I. Georgia 400 is located to the north. The Fulton County Schools North Maintenance Facility was developed on the property to the east. North Point Commons Shopping Center, this is a shopping center with the Best Buy, is located to the south. And the Atlanta Center for Dental Health is located to the west across Haynes Bridge. This master plan, Delta Credit Union master plan, was approved in '06. It allows office and bank uses and maximum building heights of up to 10 stories. We're generally supportive of the applicant's variance request because due to the unusual shape of the property to the east being developed with the recently being developed with the Fulton County Maintenance Facility, 3 road frontages. We are supporting the variance request, subject to some changes with respect to the streetscape requirements. We're asking for a minimum 6-foot sidewalk and 6-foot planter along Rock Mill Road, which I believe the applicant had already amended the site plan to comply with that condition. Minimum 8-foot sidewalk and 6-foot planter on Haynes Bridge Road. Again, the applicant had updated the site plan to reflect that, as well as minimum 6-foot sidewalk and 6-foot planters along the new streets. And when I refer to the new streets, and actually before we go to the new streets, just to orient you, this is a view across Haynes Bridge looking at the property from Haynes Bridge. And this is a photo that I'll come back to. This is a pedestrian access over to the adjacent shopping center. I'll come back to this in just a second. As it relates to the 6-foot sidewalk and 6-foot planter on new streets, this represents a new street and this represents a new street. These are alleys. So this is the applicant's site plan. Again, 43 townhomes. It does have gated access at the driveway off of Rock Mill Road. There are 14 townhomes that are oriented to Rock Mill Road. The applicant did come in with a different site plan before they made the submittal, and we did ask them to orient the townhomes to Rock Mill, and they were willing to make those changes to the site plan based on our staff comments. All the rest of the units are oriented internal to this site, and the townhomes front on open space within the development. Townhomes are 3 stories and 42 feet. The typical footprint is 24 by 51 feet. All the units are rear-loaded. Again, as I mentioned, they're accessed by internal streets as well as alleys. They're all private. There's a 25-foot undisturbed buffer that's located adjacent to the Fulton County Schools maintenance property. The North Point overlay, as it relates to parking, would require 103 parking spaces for this development. The applicant is actually showing 172 parking spaces throughout the development. They do have the 2 side-by-side spaces within the garage, and they all have code-compliant driveways. There are 3 guest parking spaces near the amenity area. This orange area up against Haynes Bridge Road is a civic space. The orange represents civic space. There is tree save, a pretty extensive tree save area within that civic space. The blue area is the amenity space. The amenity space is meant for the residents of this development. Civic space would be open to the public. With regard to their open space, they are required 0.93 acres total open space. That's 5% amenity and 10% civic. The site depicts 1.5 acres, so they're well over the minimum requirement. They're at closer to 24%. That civic space that I mentioned at the corner of Haynes Bridge and Rock Mill Road, in addition to the tree save, they have a walking trail, bicycle racks, and bicycle repair center. Their North Point Monument or Focal Point feature, I can show you what that is. If you're not familiar with the North Point Creative Placemaking Plan. These are some examples of the district thresholds or monuments. We do allow for flexibility for applicants to design their own North Point Eco District monument. If you recall the Empire Communities applications that came before this board back at the end of 2001. Those were at the corner of Hembury and Morrison and at North Point and Kimball Bridge. Empire came forward with a monument that reflected the eco-district and signage that indicated the eco-district.
Did you say 2001?
2021, my apologies. I was getting ahead of myself.
I made a mental note of that.
Going back to the open space, this blue area, as I mentioned, is amenity space, so meant for the users of this development. I'm going to switch over to a color site plan to look at that blue area that is right here. That area actually is, they're proposing community garden, as well as fire pit, walking trail. There's tree saves in that area, and their mail kiosk is in that area. There are, I've already mentioned the various tree saves in the civic and amenity space, and then their stormwater detention pond is located here up adjacent to Georgia 400. These are the renderings provided by the applicant. Renderings depict 3 stories combination of brick and board and batten. Again, this is in the North Point Eco District, North Point Overlay. We do allow for more modern, contemporary warehouse mercantile styles within that development, and we believe that these elevations would contribute to that. In the Eco District, we do have Eco District points that are required for new developments. This development requires a minimum of 7 Eco District points. The applicant has indicated in their letter of intent that they plan to provide 11, so they're in excess of the minimum requirement. They indicate that they'll do building energy efficiency, building water efficiency, enhanced bicycle amenities, additional landscape civic space, and 2 alternative measures they're asking for credit for the community gardens as well as for the trails. They've indicated that the 43 townhomes would generate 24 a.m. peak hour trips and 29 p.m. peak hour trips. Of course, reviewing the applicant's requests against the established criteria, we do believe that this development, the zoning proposal here, does reflect the vision of the North Point overlay. The proposal would allow the addition of residential use that we are trying to achieve within this area, would add to the mix of uses within this area. Of course, bringing people closer to where they're working, living, and shopping. Residential, of course, residential use versus the office use on this property would also generate fewer vehicular trips. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are supportive of the variance request. We do think that there are several hardships on this property, the multiple road frontages, the unusual shape of the property, the Georgia 400 buffer that's on this property, as well as a number of tree saves that the applicant is identified within their development. Of course, we did show this to the public at the Community Zoning Information Meeting on May 11th. There were some public comments, some concerns over the impacts to the property from the Georgia 400 improvements. Again, this development is on the on-ramp for Georgia 400, not directly on Georgia 400. We don't expect that there are going to be any kind of impacts to this development from the GDOT project on Georgia 400. There were comments about whether additional townhomes were needed in the city, traffic concerns, impact to schools, parking, public safety access, and price points. Questions about price points. With that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request, and I'll go through those conditions. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition, rezoning to R8A/D, and identifying this site plan, which is by BGE, dated 5/25/22, 2, comprehensive land use plan designation of the property shall be high-density residential. 3, dwelling for sale attached shall be listed as a permitted use in the Delta Community Credit Union Master Plan with a maximum density of 6.94 dwelling units per acre. 4, development shall be gated. 5, building setbacks and building separation shall be as depicted on the site plan. 6, architecture and material shall be developed substantially similar to the rendering that I showed you, labeled Exhibit A, subject to final approval by staff. 7, eco-district points shall be substantially similar to the description provided on the site plan by BGE dated 5/25/22. 8, at a minimum, community garden shall include raised planters, tool shed, and irrigation. HOA shall be responsible for the maintenance of the community garden. 9, minimum 0.7 acres of civic space shall be developed at the corner of Haynesbridge and Rock Mill Road. Shall include a decorative hardscape, landscape, and North Point Eco District monument or district threshold. So it allows for either those thresholds that were designed as part of the North Point Creative Placemaking Plan, or the applicant can design their own Eco District monument, and that would be subject to final approval by our Cultural Arts Commission. Of course, all that in everything in that civic space, including the monument or threshold, would be maintained by the HOA. Condition 10, minimum 1.5 acres of open space shall be reserved and improved substantially as depicted on the site plan. HOA, again, responsible for those areas. 11, green stormwater design techniques shall be employed to address runoff reduction as approved by staff. 12, privacy fences and unfinished wood decks shall not be visible from the public right-of-way. 13, townhomes shall have connectivity to the public sidewalk system. 14, new internal streets shall be developed with a minimum 4-foot planter planted with street trees and 5-foot sidewalk on one side of the street as approved by staff. Decorative pedestrian lighting shall be required throughout the development. Internal streets and alleys shall be private and maintained by the HOA. Development and street names shall be representative of the North Point Eco District. 15, developer shall improve Haynesbridge streetscape, and it gives the requirements there: 6-inch planter, 8-foot concrete sidewalk with decorative pedestrian lighting. 16 deals with the streetscape on Rock Mill Road, 6-foot planter, 6-foot sidewalk with decorative lighting. Condition 17, developer shall provide an enhanced pedestrian crossing across Rock Mill Road at Haynesbridge Road. Let me get back to the location map real quick for this condition. So before we go to the location, so I can show you where these enhanced pedestrian crossings. So this is from the North Point Creative Placemaking Plan. As you can see, this pedestrian crosswalk that was designed as part of that plan has the typical piano keys, and then it's got a leaf pattern that is beside it. So this was designed specifically for the North Point Eco District. So something similar to this is what we were looking for with the enhanced pedestrian crossings. So 17, again, developer shall provide enhanced pedestrian crossing across Rock Mill Road at Haynesbridge Road. So here, as well as at the entrance to the Fulton County Schools maintenance facility, which is here. And the reason why we want that in this location is on the opposite side of Rock Mill from the maintenance facility's main driveway. There's a nice little landing spot here that walks down to a pedestrian path and leads to the shopping center where the Best Buy is located. So it just provides access for folks in this development over to that shopping center. Of course, they could use the crosswalk at Haynes and Rock Mill, but this provides an alternative. '18, minimum 25-foot undisturbed buffer shall be provided along the east property line. 19, Georgia 400 buffer shall be planted where sparse. 20, minimum 10-foot landscape strip shall be required along private road B. B is this road here. This is A, this is B. Continuing condition 20, landscape strips and buffers shall be exclusive of utilities and easements, except that if Fulton County requires an unencumbered easement, shrubs shall replace tree requirements on one side of the street. 21, pedestrian amenities, including pathways, lighting, and benches shall be provided throughout the development. 22, trees shall be preserved as depicted on the site plan. 23, site plan shall comply with IFC Appendix D, so that's the fire marshal's condition. And 24 is the max, no more than 10% of the units being rented, as recorded in the HOA declaration and covenants. The applicant did send some markups. These markups are purely clarification markups, and we do find all of these changes to be acceptable. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Michael, for your presentation. Traditionally, this board and council has hesitated to amend comprehensive land use plan, and this particular application requires a master plan amendment. There is a term we've used several years ago when we were doing master plan amendments and COP amendments. There has to be a compelling reason. That means something you can't miss. It's so obvious that you can't miss, that may have been missed or has changed so significantly that there is a requirement to make an amendment to the comprehensive land use plan. What would you say that is?
I would say that, it's our effort to include residential to this particular area of the North Point overlay. The overlay does extend across both sides of 400 in between Haynes and Mansell. And over the years, we've really only been successful in getting residential on the north side or west side of Georgia 400 along West Side Parkway. We really haven't been successful in getting a lot of the people living close to the existing retail. So that's really, I think, the most compelling reason why we do believe this is an appropriate site. This site was rezoned back in '06, quite a while ago, and nothing has been successful here. We do think, and we've indicated in the staff report, that we do think that it's still a viable office site, but up until this point, it has not been developed as such. And so we do find that it is appropriate. We do recommend approval of residential at this location.
Of course. Yeah, the one thing that strikes me is its proximity to Georgia 400. And I would have assumed or thought that the constraints around this particular piece of property would affect residential more than office because of traffic. If you would maybe review the traffic impacts, the ingress into and out of this development. How would you compare the potential traffic challenges you have in getting in and out?
So, I'm not the expert. I'm not the transportation engineer as it relates to that. I mean, it is a pretty, there is a light here. It is a kind of unusual location, admittedly. But, based on this use generating much fewer trips than an office use, I think that even goes towards supporting this request, the lower traffic generator at this location, just because of the strange access here. You do have alternatives at this location. You can come out here to Haynes Bridge and jump onto 400.
Can you put that on the screen that you're pointing at?
I'm sorry. I was just looking at that and pointing it here, thinking that it was on the screen. So there are, multiple, ways that you can go out of this site. So it's not just a one-way situation. So you can come up to Haynes Bridge. But you also have the possibility of coming out Rock Mill, which leads out to North Point Parkway as well. So there's some alternative ways to get away from this particular property. But again, proximity to the mall too. We've got an application for the mall, redevelopment at the mall. that will be coming forward soon, and I suspect that we'll see a lot more folks just like we saw with Avalon. So there was a lot of development that you saw occurring around Avalon after that was built. I think a lot of people are starting to anticipate what could happen at the mall, and that's why you're going to probably we'll see more applications kind of surrounding in the vicinity of the mall.
Michael, sorry, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, just a quick question. I think when I drove it, I kind of forgot that was there. And with the noise, I'm not so worried about that because as you saw in the last case, we have an ordinance for that with the maintenance facility next door. They do work odd hours because school does start early. The one question I do have is I couldn't tell because I didn't go home that way, but what kind of fencing is between 400 and this community? Is there anything there that on GDOT side? My thing is we're putting a proposal of a walking path right near the ramp to 400. I mean, is there anything on there that's...
I'm not aware of any fencing in there. We don't allow for fencing within the buffer. We could have it, it could be on the outside of the buffer, or that buffer is a 60-foot wide buffer. So if they wanted to, just as out of concerns for noise or
No, I wasn't
children,
thinking noise. I'm
or
thinking of pedestrians, a ramp,
yeah.
highway, the
So-
kid on the bike that goes too far off the property, it's going to be families. So that we're not sure. That may be something to just.
I'm
I'll
not
drive
aware
by
of
it
any
again.
fencing there. The street views, I do have some street views down that on-ramp looking at the property, and I didn't see any fencing in there. I just don't know if there's maybe fencing hidden within the buffer potentially. But that would really be up to the applicant if they had any safety concerns there, to put up fencing on the outer edge of the buffer. They are utilizing the buffer in that amenity space. With some walking trails in there, and we do allow for some walking trails to go in there, so I don't know that they would fence that, put a fence here and kind of fence that trail off, or if they'd have a gate to that trail. You may want to ask if the applicant has any concerns about that.
Michael, one more, just to clarify, did you say on the modifications that staff was okay with all these changes? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, we are. So these three changes to conditions 4, 14, and 22 proposed by the applicant, we are fine with these changes. They're really just points of clarification. I had a discussion with the applicant, I believe it was yesterday, and these are exactly the way that she had presented them to me, and I'm okay with them.
Michael, to clarify, if the exit from this proposed development is onto Rock Mill Road, and then you turn towards Haynesbridge Road, you can only go right at that point onto Haynesbridge Road. You cannot make a left. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a median there in Haynesbridge, so you couldn't make a left. Okay. But if you're in a vehicle, of course, you could come out this way, come out to North Point Parkway, and there are alternatives to get over there. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll have the applicant come forward, make a presentation. I assume the applicant is back there.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Julie Sellers with Dillard Sellers here on behalf of the applicant, Beezer Homes. It's been a little while since I've had the privilege of being in front of you, and it is nice to be here. Want to thank Michael for his hard work. This is my third public hearing this week, and you all know what a great staff you have, but it's just highlighted when you have 3 in 1 week. Michael does such a thorough job, and it really is great. We are thrilled to be here with the staff support. We have worked on making changes and have had a lot of great meetings. So the plan that you see before you is a product of those changes and the input. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. I know it's been a long evening. As the chairman recognized, we are seeking not just a rezoning, but also a master plan amendment and a comprehensive development plan amendment. And we know that those are not taken lightly. I'm very familiar with the arduous process that the city went through to adopt the comp plan for the Horizons 2040 just last year. And of course, with any planning tool, the city doesn't have the ability to go parcel by parcel by parcel. And so I do think that the corporate office in general is reflective of kind of this area, but we do think that there are compelling reasons, and I'll touch on those a little bit, for both the master plan amendment and the comp plan amendment. Do I have the ability to change, or can I just let you know next slide? Okay, great. If we'll go ahead and switch to the next slide. This is a slide that shows the master plan amendment and why we are seeking an amendment to this. What you see on the left of the page is the overall Delta Credit master plan. This envisioned a 10-story office building, a 10,000 square foot facility, a parking deck, and it included, as you can see, the undeveloped parcel, and what is now the maintenance facility. So there is no way that this master plan can come to life. The development of the maintenance facility sort of took away the ability to see this master plan come to fruition, because essentially you have basically just our corner that's undeveloped. We do believe that given the fact that it has had the office zoning, given the location and the access, with a residential community, especially 43 townhomes, our traffic counts are significantly less than an office user would be. It does have restrictive access. We believe that that will be fine for our residential users that we are anticipating living here, but do think it has been an impediment to developing for office. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to point out a couple of reasons why there are some of the goals in the in the comprehensive plan that, while not in line with the future land use current designation, we really are satisfying the goals and intent of the comprehensive plan, and I'm highlighting only two of multiple ways that we're doing that. In your comp plan, there is a recognition of the current office vacancies in the city. We have seen a dramatic shift in the type of office users, and certainly in the need for office. New offices are coming in mixed use types of settings, and so we believe that this site is just not suitable for a standalone office. You've got vacancies up and down, and on the next slide I'll show you some of the square footages of surrounding office in the area. Let me go back to the one, just to touch on the housing need. We know that Alpharetta, and quite frankly the metro Atlanta area in general, we need more housing. And so we've got to be strategic with where we place housing. This is for sale, again, 43 townhomes, and we believe that that is one of the goals in the comprehensive plan that the city is focused on getting it right. So we believe that this change can be part of the solution. So we are requesting the change from the corporate office to the high density residential to allow for this community. If we go to the next slide, this again is talking about the rezoning, but I think that it fits in with the whole big picture, and in particular on this comp plan change. We are requesting the change from O&I to the R8A, and what you see on the page left is just some information that we pulled together in a very close proximity. You can see our property in with that star, and you can see some of the numbers, and we've got about 2 million square feet of office that's approved for development just on this small slide that you see. That's a significant amount of office, and while we know that Alpharetta is a very attractive place for office users, looking at smaller parcels, this is 6 acres as a standalone office, given the volume of office in the area, we do believe that the goals of the city as expressed in the comprehensive plan do support both the comp plan change as well as the rezoning. If we can go ahead and go to the next slide, I hope, and if this isn't clear on your screen, I can put up on the overhead if that's a little easier. And I want to just kind of walk through and talk about, because I think there were some great questions raised about the Georgia 400. Hopefully it shows here. This is obviously on the entrance ramp. So you've got the entrance ramp. We've got 60 feet. Excuse me, let me back up. We've got basically this 60 feet of the undisturbed buffer on our property. In addition to that, we've got additional right-of-way going towards Georgia 400. So we are pretty far set back. The walking trail that we have envisioned back there is really, it is only for the residents, and it would just be not a paved surface, but just really, it's going to be, there's a lot of trees out there. It's a heavily wooded area. So really just a place for the residents to get out and walk through the trees, not open to the public. As Michael said, we worked really hard. We know that the tree save is something that we spend a lot of time and effort trying to make sure we're making meaningful tree saves. There's a water oak. That's how we came up with the name Water Oak Township that is at the corner that we are saving. And really, we believe that this is an opportunity to really create a sense of place in the eco district, to have the signage, the monument, and really have the statement piece right there for this parcel and for this area right on Haynes Bridge. So in the civic space, there's an opportunity not only to have the sidewalks, but then also to have kind of a pedestrian path going around. And we know that people currently, and we think there will be an increased number of people that are biking. So one of the amenities that we are providing to the public in that civic space is a bike repair kit. So if you're out there and you've got a flat or something, this is an area, it really is community interfacing. And we think that this is a great opportunity to make a meaningful use of this property and truly help transform this into more of a mixed use area. I think we've got one other slide. This is, as Michael showed, the elevations. Happy to talk about this. As he mentioned, these are all rear-loaded townhomes. We do have the townhomes that will be fronting on Rock Mill, and then significant green space and courtyards internal to the community. On the next slide, this is just the 3 slight modifications. Worked with Michael, and as he said, it's really clarification. On the development, the original condition said shall be gated. That is, we asked for that to be changed to may, simply because we haven't worked with the traffic engineer for the city to make sure with our access that that's going to work from a standpoint if we need to have a bypass lane for guests and that sort of thing. So we just wanted some flexibility there and not have to come back for a change in conditions if we run into something unexpected. Again, on 14, it's not changing the condition. I'm wearing my hat and I'm thinking down the road when my client is in for permitting, hopefully. Didn't want there to be any confusion as to which were alleys and which were streets, so it's just providing that clarification for C and D. And then similarly, Michael and I talked this through, and he's like, Julie, you're not going to have to replant trees in the tree save area. Trees aren't going to grow under trees. But again, just wanting to have a little specificity that the intent of that replanting language is for landscape materials. So with that, happy to answer any questions. I am remiss in not introducing my team that I have with me. Scott Butler is here with Beezer. We have Blaine Coleman, who is our engineer, and Baxter Russell in my office. Happy to answer questions and really appreciate your time and consideration of this application.
Thank you for your presentation. One of the things you try to do, especially for a matter like this, as you have seen with other applications, this board is very diligent in evaluating every single application to make sure they're fully satisfied, because what we do can create a precedent, and we want to make sure that we are doing what is right for the city. So the questions we ask or comments we make are advancing that mission to make sure we're doing what is in the best interest of the public. And the city in general. With respect to walkability, can you walk us through how that enhances the walkability aspect of what we're trying to do along the North Point area? I'm concerned about how busy Haynes Bridge is and crossing over to go to the mall. How would people be able to go to do that?
Sure. And I'll talk here and I guess try to orient. So admittedly, I think when we look at walkability, we're looking at it from two different standpoints, both internal in our site. So we've got walking trails, we've got a lot of connectivity with sidewalks internal. What I'm hearing you ask is talk about the walkability and creating that mixed use environment in the community at large.
Correct.
I would say, three things come to mind. One is, having the sidewalks and having the landscaping and having it a safe and comfortable pedestrian experience. That certainly enhances what is existing and, quite frankly, lacking today. When Michael and I were talking about the conditions about painting the enhanced crosswalk, if you've been out around this area, the piano keys or the zebra stripes, right now they're in terrible condition across Rock Mill at the intersection of Haynes Bridge. It's the painting's faded. It's very, it's not a meaningful pedestrian crosswalk area right there. So I think that adding that leaf print for the eco district not only aesthetically will enhance the area, but certainly provide that signal both visually to the vehicular traffic as well as the pedestrians. This is intended for pedestrian use. I did not know, and I'm thrilled that Michael did, that there is a sidewalk and a stairs, my mind's going blank, stairs on Rock Mill going down into the Best Buy shopping center. And so by adding that enhanced crosswalk closer to the maintenance facility, that will allow not only for our residents, but quite frankly for the folks that are working in the area to really see that this is a access point that they can not have to get in their car to run over at lunch to the Best Buy shopping center, but instead walk over there and use that sidewalk connectivity. So I can't say that I think that we're going to see, nor that we would want a significant amount right here trying to cross Haynes Bridge, but I do think that going down farther and as additional developments with the mall and in this area, I think this is going to be, quite frankly, sort of the end piece of what is going to transform into a more walkable community at large. And this is making a meaningful connection for the people that could live and the people that are already working in there to have more connectivity to the retail in the area.
I definitely appreciate and never try to question a developer or not trying to develop something. This is expensive, so I'm sure that you've done your homework, so we try not to question that, the intent of it, and we respect that. Does anybody else have any questions?
Quick question on the stormwater management. We've had quite a lot of discussion of that on some of our other applications. So can you kind of explain the vision back here? Is this going to be aesthetically pleasing as we have talked about before tonight?
I caught a portion of the conversation, so I don't want to commit to something I'm not fully vetted on, but yes, the intent here is it will certainly have the landscaping, as you can see. It will be sort of in the rear area as you're going towards the buffer, but it will definitely be attractive. And as I did hear the woman recognize she and her husband might have different opinions on what's aesthetically pleasing, and I think that's very accurate. But this is certainly intended to be a landscaped, manicured area that serves the purposes of the retention.
Are you thinking about maybe possibly, I don't see a walking trail around it, but would that be a possibility, or?
I think that is an area where we've got some tree save. So I think one of the things that we are mindful of and have learned from prior experiences is we don't want to commit to something on the plan that the arborist would then take issue with. So I think that there's an opportunity for some, natural connectivity. We have provided sidewalks as on the plan, and I don't know how clear it shows, but these are all rear loaded. So your front door goes out, and we do have sidewalk connectivity for all the homes in the community to allow for that area, and then tying in that nature trail back at the community garden and amenity space.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, I'll open this for public comments. Anyone back there would like to speak in favor?
No one? Bueller?
Anyone in opposition? None would like to speak in favor or in opposition. Anything else you'd like to add before I turn this over to the board?
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
All right, thank you. Well, I turn this over to the board for a motion and or discussion.
Mr. Chairman, before I make a motion, I do want to concur with you on making a land use plan as a big deal, but I do prefer seeing a, homes, for sale homes versus apartments or a 10-story office building. So with that, I would like to make a motion to approve MP-22-06/Z-22-01/B-22-11 Beazer Homes Delta Credit Union Master Plan, subject to the following conditions. However, the modifications, substituting the modifications of number 4, 14, and 22 as requested by applicant and concurred with staff.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? One thing I'd like to point out to the board is, and it's true when you make an amendment to the comprehensive land use plan, it's a big deal. And what we usually look at is, are there potential unintended consequences? Does it set a precedent where we get a lot of other applications requesting the same? It is true that master plans can be amended, and we have. In fact, we did an amendment across the street. There are 2 restaurants, there is a bank, and there was significant debate about that. And but based on, I was putting down a list of things that Julie mentioned, one of which was advancing or supporting the city's goals for additional housing or for sale housing, and then several square feet of office space. And there has been a significant change in the way people actually work. Most people don't want to go to the office after the pandemic. And maybe there is a need for housing. I'm still hesitant regarding the location of this and walkability to other places in the area. But I'm inclined to support this application for the things that were mentioned. Yeah. If there is no further discussion, I will call a vote. And if all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. City Council will make the final decision, but the recommendation is to approve. Wish you the best as you develop this piece of property. Any other matter for the board's consideration tonight? You can take as much time as you want. Meeting is adjourned. July 7th is the next meeting.